understand.
Y'all, before we start the meeting, I need to, you can keep rolling, Jeff. I need to go ahead and make sure everybody understands how important it is the person sitting next to me is the person taking notes. So I hope without any objection, y'all are okay with Erica coming sitting next to me, because she's the person taking notes. I appreciate that. She's the person taking notes, and very often I have to refer to her and ask her to have my help. Does anybody have an objection to that?
I have an objection to that.
We have an objection to Erica, the person taking notes, sitting next to me.
Isn't she supposed to be over there?
The person taking notes has always sat next to me. Kay has always sat next to me.
I'm happy to have my microphone on if you want to attend. Are we live? Are we recording anything yet? Erica's been requested many times over the last couple of weeks to be trained on using that system. Things have changed since we've gone to electronic voting, and the city needs to have a primary and a secondary person trained on using the electronic voting system. The person next to you is not taking notes for you. The person next to you is taking notes for the entire board. And that can be done from that different location, as it was at the most previous meeting by our city recorder.
We have another person already over there taking notes. I would appreciate if y'all would allow me to, actually, here's what we'll do. Let's go ahead and start, and we'll set the agenda, and we'll add this to the agenda, okay? So, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order for tonight, which is March 10th, 2020. I'm sorry?
That person
Okay,
doesn't
come on
take
over.
notes, that's the IT person.
Yes, thank you.
That's the IT person, not the person taking notes.
Yes, it's not the person in charge of keeping votes.
Yes. Hi, Erica.
So this is our March 10th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And the first order of business is to call ourselves to order, but we're going to begin typically as we do, and that's with a prayer and a pledge. And I would like to add to my agenda, since you see that we have the agenda here in just a second, but we're going to start with a prayer and a pledge. Please, Alderman Robertson, begin with us for us, please.
Shall we pray? Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight with a heart full of thanks, but also a heart full of concern. We ask, oh God, that you in your infinite love will touch those that have experienced loss of property, and especially of persons with the storms. We also pray, oh Lord, that this virus that has so affected the world would be obliterated, dear Lord. Please kill it in every country, in every hamlet, in every village that it exists. Restore the health, dear Lord, and security of our world. Now, dear Lord, we pray for your divine wisdom, your courage and strength that you give us tonight as we deliberate the important issues of this city. We pray that everything that we say, act, and do is in accordance with your will. Watch over us and protect us. Protect every citizen of our city. Protect our first responders as they answer the call and they go out to maintain peace and security in our city. Send your guardian angels to watch over them and let them return safely home to their kith and kin. Now we pray, dear Lord, that your will be done in our lives and in this meeting tonight. And in your precious Jesus Christ's name, your Son, Jesus Christ, we ask these things, and we all say it.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to entertain a motion to accept our agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. I've got an amendment that I'd like to remove item A on ordinance and resolutions. One of the sponsors is not here. The other sponsor, Alderman Bolt.
I'll second that.
Go ahead and withdraw that. Okay, so we don't actually need a motion to do that. He's asking to withdraw it.
Okay.
And the other item is that let's put right next is a decision on having the city recorder pro tem sit next to me. So I'm going to make that motion to add that to the agenda so we can make that decision as a group. And I'll so move. And a second. We will do that next. So the reason for that is that very often when Kay's here, I nod over to Kay and ask her to help me run the meeting because we need somebody who's taking notes to help with that. We already have somebody helping with electronic voting over there. We don't necessarily need two people with electronic voting. If you feel like we do need two people with electronic voting, maybe we just don't do electronic voting. it's very important that we have somebody right here running the meeting. So I'm
Are
gonna
we
ask that
debating
be
adding
added
it to the agenda, or are we debating the issue itself?
So, we've got a motion, a second, to add that to the agenda. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of
Mayor.
adding that to the agenda, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All those in favor of adding
I know
that to the
I'm-
agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Yes, a discussion.
We're just motioning to add it to the agenda. Is
Oh,
there any
okay.
discussion on adding it to the agenda? All those in favor of adding to the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. Who said no? Okay. Do y'all have this set up so we can do electronic voting on this item? Okay, and this is just to add this item to the agenda.
Repeat the motion.
The motion is for us to consider that our,
What's the effect of not adding it to the agenda?
the effect of, I can't really say. So the effect of not on the agenda would not be on the agenda. So what I'm asking is to add to the agenda is consideration of allowing the city recorder pro tem to sit next to me. We just need to add that to the agenda. Any discussion on adding that to the agenda? I need you to raise your hand, actually, I think, okay. Alderman Robertson.
So we're not deliberating
Um,
merits, we're just.
I'm sorry, my screen has changed, and there we go. I'm sorry, Alderman Robertson, go ahead.
So, point of clarification,
Yes.
we're not voting on the actual issue. That will be deliberated later. This is just whether to put it on the agenda.
Yes.
For
yes,
discussion.
Yes. Or we could all just nod our heads and just get over this, and she can come sit here and help us out. So,
can't hear
you. Alderman Bolt.
I guess I'm not really following it. Doesn't this just fall under whatever, she's an employee, so she falls under the city administrator? Why don't we ask the city administrator what he wants to do?
I'm also the chairman of this body,
Yeah?
and I feel like it'd be helpful to have the city recorder sitting next to us.
I don't understand that, but we can deal with that later then.
Alderman Brown.
I have an amendment. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm new to this. See, I was gone 2 weeks ago.
Do you want to speak on this item, of adding this item to the agenda?
No.
Okay. Jason, have you got it set up for us? Okay. So, all those in favor of adding this item to the agenda, please signify by pressing the green button. Those opposed, please signify by pressing the red button.
What are we voting on?
Can you repeat the amendment?
Whether to add my request to have our, add our request to add to the agenda, to have our city recorder pro tem help us with a meeting by sitting next to me.
Okay.
Okay. We're still missing some votes.
Yep. I'm sorry, we were still discussing it. Can we do it again?
I don't think we can do it again.
I'm
We
not
think it's-
blinking anymore.
Go ahead and vote, go ahead and vote. Everybody's gonna have to vote again. Press your button, green, if you agree to add it to the agenda, press it red. Yes, vote again. Press green if you agree to add it to the agenda, press red if not. So that passes by a vote of 8-3. So that is added to the agenda. Alderman Brown, I think you
I
had
was-
something you'd like to add to the agenda.
Well, I didn't even see my name up there to vote, so that's okay.
There we go. Jason, did we do that correctly?
I didn't see Steve's vote.
So what happens when somebody doesn't vote in the 15 seconds?
I was trying to vote.
I'm sorry? How would you like to vote, Alderman Brown?
I'll go along with the group, and that means it's added to the agenda. I'd like to amend the agenda by adding 2020-16 with a resolution approving application for COPS grant to hire 3 new police officers. This is a 75-25 grant. They will pay if we can get the grant, it would pay 75% of their salaries for a 3-year period.
Do you want to make that item D?
I'll make it wherever you'd like to put it.
Let's do. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you want to explain any more about it?
That's all I know about it.
Okay. Alderman Strauss.
Are we against a hard deadline, something that we would lose out if we did?
We are.
pass? Okay,
Got to be
thank
done
you.
by the 11th.
Thanks.
So,
Any other discussion on adding that to the agenda? I don't think we need to hit buttons here. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. So we've added 2 things to the agenda. We've removed 1. We're back to the main motion. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. So next item we have is asking our city recorder pro tem to sit next to me here and help with the meeting. I don't know if y'all notice it, but very often I have to turn to Kay as she's sitting next to me and ask her where we are, what the main motion is, if we have a second, if we have a motion on the floor, and what the motion on the floor is. It's very helpful to have the person who's taking notes sitting next to me. I don't feel like we need our city recorder back there helping with the electronic voting. I was assured by our interim city administrator that Jason can handle that, and I'm pretty sure that he can. It would just be helpful to have this person right here helping us with the meeting. Alderman Sprouse.
Heaven help us if we ever have to actually make a complicated decision, because something that's so simple is being highly complicated. As I said prior to this vote, acting as city recorder in the absence of city recorder, including being able to operate the electronic voting system, is the job description of the employee in question. No question. We've all received the emails. I have no need to read them to you. We've seen them all, where Director of IT has asked for the employee to be trained on the voting system, where the city administrator has asked for the employee to be trained on the voting system, and the response has been that the mayor has told the employee that she does not need to be trained on the system. We now have a situation where our city recorder is not here. We do not have the person who's supposed to be the secondary, fulfill that role in the secondary role, is not yet trained. So what we have is we have one of our IT employees who is typically not here, who is assisting her tonight to show her how the system is working. That's it. We did it at the last meeting, and it seemed to work pretty well. The mayor so far tonight has run the meeting pretty well. I trust his ability after more than 3 years in that chair of being able to run a meeting without being able to lean over and ask in soft voice a question of the city recorder. The city recorder or the city recorder designee can do the job sitting away from the table. The one thing that they can't do is they can't control the voting system, the most important thing. Ideally, our city administrator would be sitting in that chair. I believe that that was the intention. If for some reason we are having some problems in the transition, I know that our director of IT, so we will have 2 IT employees acting as city recorder functions tonight. She has volunteered that she would sit in that chair. It's not something that typically she does. Quite frankly, her pay grade is much higher than that. But she is so interested in making sure that the employee who is supposed to know how to operate the voting system has the ability to be trained immediately on the voting system, passed immediately, because now we're in a situation where she needs to be in that role, is trained, and then so the IT employee could do that. I know it's a long way to explain it, but I am just tired of, I'm not going to say what type of match it is, but there is a certain match going on where something that's simple keeps going back and forth. And then this board is trying to look like we're being the bad guys because we're trying to follow procedure and we're trying to work with folks, and at the last minute some wrench is thrown into something. I ask that you vote however we have to vote, that the city recorder designee perform the functions in her job description and sit in the place that allows her to do such a thing. I don't know if that's a yes vote or a no vote. If we're voting on this chair or that chair, if it's that chair, vote for that yonder chair over there. Thank you.
Alderman Sprouse, thank you. Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you. First, I apologize to the employee who's this is happening to, both the email and this tonight. But who is supposed to sit to your left?
It's always been the city recorder, whoever the mayor is.
And next meeting, who will sit next to you?
I've seen nothing to say anything otherwise.
Okay, so Kay is no longer doing that.
I've seen nothing to say. I mean, when Kay comes back, I assume, if Kay were here tonight, I assume she would be here. When Kay comes back, I assume she will be here. I've seen nothing to say otherwise.
So from the audience, I'm hearing that no one is going to be sitting next to you. Everyone's going to be behind us. Is that correct, Dave? Or whoever wants to answer. I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, this is such a small thing that, like, I hear one man asking for help for some reason. I'll get to that. And
Come up here.
thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to turn into this. The electronic voting system that was purchased and was voted upon needs to be outside of the board's view. It's the whole purpose of not doing line-by-line name calling. It's so that you guys could do an independent vote. That is being run from that computer in the back corner. That person sees the screen, sees the votes, displays them. We're going to hopefully remove that timer so that you guys have all the time in the world to vote. When all the votes are in, then we'll display it. Jason's working on that now for the rest of the votes for tonight. But the person at that chair, that person that flips that switch to say, okay, all the votes are tallied and I'm going to display them up here, it's their job to control when that happens, whose vote that is the city recorder. They're in charge of making sure every vote that this board is voting on is accurate and completed. And that responsibility falls to the person that's at that location. Now, it could be that location, it could be somewhere back here, it could be over here. We can move it wherever you want. We can put the person in the booth. That the location doesn't matter, but that person has to be outside of sight from the board.
And the employee is currently being trained by, I think you said Jason, tonight.
Yes,
And
Jason's getting time and a half for being here.
So if she's not there, then she's not being trained by Jason. And is it possible to train her outside of tonight, or is tonight just a live run-through to
No,
see how she does?
we've been trying to train her all week, but I know she's been busy with Kay being out. It's her first time, she's relatively new, and Kay is recently out, so she's been trying to fill Kay's shoes, which Kay's been here a long time.
Right.
She's got some pretty big shoes to fill, so.
And just to be clear, Kay will not be coming back to these meetings,
Sitting
by.
there, no, she'll be
Okay.
back in the corner. And Kay knows that, Kay's okay with it.
Who
Kay-
made that decision?
The board did when they voted for the electronic software.
We voted that Kay wouldn't be sitting here?
I don't want to
I
get
don't
into
remember
that.
that.
I have the floor. I'd rather finish
I'm sorry. Go
my
ahead.
stuff. So that makes sense to me that we shouldn't be seeing the voting. I get that. So thank you. So now my question is, what exactly do you need help with? And hopefully we can try to help you.
Okay.
I offered to sit up there
It's
and
nice
help.
to have this person here who's the person who's taking notes. So
Is
then-
Erica taking notes?
Erica's taking notes, and that's been Kay's primary responsibility, and that is the city recorder's responsibility to take notes during the meeting, not listen to the recording later on. The reason that is important is because there are times when I need to find out what is actually on the floor, what amendment is on the floor, and just ask some very simple questions, just to make sure where we are. And the example I go back to occasionally is when we had a decision on the trash fee at 3 in the morning. I didn't turn to Kay and ask her,
Okay.
and I should have done that. And it ended up that we had to have a special meeting because of
And
it,
if she stays there, you'll have to ask across the room. She'll have to reply back across the room.
pretty much.
Okay. I beg that we get through tonight and hopefully we try to come up with some compromise. Because I can kind of see his point from needing help and not having to scream across the room. But at the same time, I completely agree that we shouldn't be seeing votes over there. So I just beg that we move on and try to fix this before our next meeting. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Alderman Robertson.
That sounds like a pretty good solution, with the exception of if the mayor needs someone tonight. Dave, could you ask someone to come up tonight to take notes and to assist the mayor, or could you do it? I mean,
That's probably where the city administrator will be, is she's not there.
is there any problem with the city administrator being there to help you?
I don't think so. I need the person who's taking notes to do that, and we do have 2 IT people here that could work back there, and if we had the person taking notes here, at least tonight.
But we're
I
not
think
in
that's a
charge
pretty-
of
I
the
think
votes.
I think that's a pretty good compromise, to have the person taking notes here tonight,
I
and
could
then we'll
take
figure it out
notes.
from here on.
I'm not,
Hold on. Alderman Robertson.
I sure don't want to have to vote on this. I wish we
agree.
could just come up with a solution where that we can maybe work on it. You and the city administrator can work on this, outside this setting. So, just for tonight, Mayor, would you allow someone from IT to come and just take notes and to help you, and then you and Dave try to work, and then if we have to vote on it the next
Yeah.
meeting, but tonight, just do a temporary fix, and then you and Dave try to work it out?
I'd be good with that, but I think maybe temporary is have Erica sit here for tonight, and then she'll have some more time to do training. And part of the reason that she hasn't been able to do training is because that Kay has been gone. So let's have her finish that training next week, have her sit here now, and then 2 weeks from now, between now and 2 weeks, I can get with Dave, we can work it out. Part of the problem was that I didn't know that this was the situation that was going to happen tonight, and so that's why we're sort of caught off guard. So if she could sit here tonight, next 2 weeks, we can work it out.
So, Dave, do you have any objections to that solution for just tonight?
You guys hired me, I'm gonna look forward to it.
No further questions.
Okay. And I do want to clarify a little bit is that I felt the email about the training was a little bit harsh and the comments about the training was a little bit harsh. There weren't excuses and there was some training that had been done. We had some problem getting everything in to us in time last Wednesday, which saw us come back up on Thursday and Friday, which sort of caused problems with the training. Alderman Cunningham.
Dave, could you, I have a question for Dave. Could you come up here with Mary Beth?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I got an email about this whole deal. And it seems that you hit a roadblock about Erica being trained on this system. Is that correct?
Yes, and she has been overwhelmed with a double workload, but we're just trying to work it in where we can get her to learn the system at her pace. But there's been a lot of stuff going on, and she had been a little bit of pushback, but she's willing to step up and learn.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like she's very willing to learn.
I'm going to withdraw this. I was hoping that we wouldn't mention a name, but I'm going to withdraw this.
Oh, I'm
And we'll
sorry.
continue the meeting as we, if everybody's okay with that, I'll withdraw this. We'll continue the meeting as we're sitting right now.
Okay.
That's probably fair. Go ahead.
So I had someone say that last meeting, the video of the results was not very clear. I'll be honest, I haven't seen it because this was a new request or question to me.
Okay.
So is there a way to kind of screenshot this and add it to the video, or at least zoom in close enough people can actually see who voted for what?
I can look and see how it's coming across on the Kramer. The feed that feeds that projector also feeds the equipment in the back, so it's a direct feed onto the DVD. I'll make sure that that's in focus and everything. I'll go back and check on it.
Okay. All right,
I'll
thank
also
you.
announce the names as we go. So the next item we have on the agenda is presentations.
I do have a point, if I could at least, I didn't want to break in earlier with that.
Go ahead.
He has requirements for who acts as city recorder or city recorder designate.
As I said, I've withdrawn that.
I know, but I just think for a point of information, I held back, and just wanted to say, one of the requirements, the main requirement is going through straight training.
Alderman Sprouse, if we want to do that another time, that's fine,
Okay.
but I've withdrawn that. I think we need to go ahead with the folks that are here.
I just want to say, I think that the city attorney is capable and is competent, according to the state of Tennessee, to act in that role. I'm sure he would be happy to assist you with note-taking.
I can do something pretty cool. I get to recognize, as well as y'all do, a couple wonderful, wonderful athletes and students. We have two folks here from Beach High School, as well as their parents. I think it's always important to recognize the parents as well. One of these wrestlers began wrestling when he was 6. One of these wrestlers began wrestling when he was 9. I'm pretty sure they didn't drive themselves to practice in meets back then. I'm very sure that it was their parents. So I want to introduce you to Trey Bates. Come on up here, Trey, please. He has won the TSSAA State Wrestling Championship, which was just a couple weeks ago. And he's a junior at Beach High School, and he won the 120-pound state championship with a record of 46-2. And we also have Mason Smith. And Mason also won a TSSAA State Championship, and he's a junior at Beach. Both these guys are juniors at Beach. This is his second time in the final, and he won the 152 state classification. He had a record of 32-1. They're both juniors at Beach, so we have anticipation of what next year will be like. But I also would ask their parents to stand up as well. Thank you so much. Y'all want to say anything? Oh, I'm sorry. And this is his second. This is his second state championship. Beach has turned out 4 or 5 state champions in the past couple years. Hendersonville has a couple, but it's wonderful to see where the program is at Beach right now. And so hopefully next year we will see them again and maybe some other guys. So do y'all want to say anything?
I just want to thank my dad and my coaches for pushing me this year. I had kind of a setback last year because I did not get to wrestle in the states last year because I broke my hand. But freshman year, I won state, like he said. I went 52-0, and it felt good to get to come back. So, yeah. Thank you.
You know, first off, I'd like to thank God and Jesus because they've blessed me with a great opportunity. I went through 2 shoulder surgeries last year and did not get to compete in the state tournament. And a lot of people didn't think I'd be able to make it back. In fact, I didn't think I was going to come back, but I did. And, you know, I got to thank my brother for pushing me every day. My mom, she's always been in it with me. My dad, he's always loved me and been there for me. And my sister, been a great role model for me. So I got to thank them, and the work you put in is what you get out. So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We now have a public hearing, and this is to hear a request by Peyton Montgomery LLC to approve a final development plan for the Jack Alexander property, Lot 2, which is Pet Suites, and to add animal care and veterinarian services, a kennel, to the list of permitted uses for the property as identified by Sumner County Property Tax Map 159J A017.00. And the first person on here wishing to speak is Lisa Wilson of Merrick Road.
Hello.
You're good.
I don't have any vested interest in the property, quite honestly. I'm here on behalf of the neighbors. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I don't really speak in public a lot. The neighbors actually came to a boarding facility where I work. They wanted to get information about the noise level, things of that nature. I do work at a boarding facility in Hendersonville, and they kind of did a tour through to kind of see what it sounds like on the inside. We run a very small scale facility. At our max, we're at 140 dogs. I'm pretty sure from what I read on the minutes from last meeting, this one's probably going to be like, what, 10 times that size? I don't know. Do you guys have 200 dogs? 200 dogs max? Did they say the square footage? I wasn't able to read all that. I tried to. Like I said, I just read as much as I could about it. The neighbors came to us because they are concerned about the noise. I know that every single dog care facility that already exists in town does not have any residential neighbors. And there's a reason they don't have any residential neighbors, because we would be getting phone calls kind of all day long. We have dogs that play in daycare, outdoors, for the majority of the day. There's nothing you can do about dogs barking. We actually have a dog that's staying at our facility right now that screams, literally the entire time it's there. It's a German short-haired pointer. They just scream. If we had neighbors, we're in an industrial park. So there are, I think, 4 or 5 facilities that already exist in town. They are all in industrial areas because of what would happen with residential neighbors. In my opinion, it's too loud. I wouldn't want to live next to a boarding facility. I would invite people to go somewhere, go to a boarding facility, stand outside, and imagine that being your backyard. I know you guys have probably already made up your minds about this, and it's not anything that I can say, but I'd say think about that being your backyard and hearing dogs barking all day long, because that's what these people are going to end up having to deal with. And I think that they deserve at least a chance to hear what these people have to say. I know there was some sort of issue with they weren't able to speak, or they didn't know that they could speak up at the last meeting, whatever it was. But I think they deserve to at least hear how these people are going to mitigate the sound, you know, for their own well-being, for their own comfort in their own homes. Like I said, I don't have any vested interest in the property. I already work at a facility. They open up a bigger one, I might apply for a job there, quite honestly. But it's not somewhere I want to live. So I'm speaking on behalf of the neighbors where from what I understand, their backyards are going to back up to this place. Is that accurate?
We don't typically answer questions, Erica. I'm sorry, Lisa. We're happy to take your comments.
Okay, well, like I said, like I said, you guys probably already made up your minds about all this. I know it's probably a huge payout, a lot of tax money, but the neighbors there deserve at least a chance to speak up and let you guys know how it's going to affect them. So that's what I'm here for. I work in a facility. I deal with the noise all day long. And I honestly believe it would be a nuisance to the neighbors, so.
Lisa, thank you. Chuck Roten, Burrs Avenue.
My name's Chuck Roten. I live at Burrs Avenue. And tonight, we do not need to talk about drainage problems. We do not need to talk about the time the facility is going to be open or not. All that the other night was just wasted time, you know. You put the dumpster on the other side of the building, which will take the smell away from Miss Alexander, who's not here tonight with us because, you know, her health's not the best. You put the dumpster on the other side. You haven't made the smell go away. You know, you put the smell over on the Burris side. Whenever they build over there, now they're going to have to smell with they got the smell. You put the dumpster fairly close to the parking lot, so the people coming out of their cars, they're going to walk down the sidewalk in front of the dumpster, you know. And I've been told in the summertime, flies and the little wigglers, you know, it's pretty rank, a dumpster, you know. And I think it's a health issue now, really, with walking down the sidewalk in front of it, you know. But anyway, you throwed it over on the Burses, okay. Barking, that's all I really want to talk about now is barking. Sunday, I went to White House. There's a man named Justin Rubson. He lives about 300 foot from a facility called the House of Paws. And he has fought for 2 years with the noise. He has the noise problem. And he's called the Sumner County Sheriff's Department, the White House, the police department, and they tell him they cannot do nothing with it. You know, it's legal. They're in a commercial facility, and it's, you know, they can do nothing about it, you know. And you're telling me that if I have a problem with it, that I need to call you and you'll take care of it. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, you can't control a dog, how he barks. You know, he's not going to listen to you. And Justin was in the process of, when I got there, he was painting the inside of his house. He said, it's bothered me so much for 2 years. He said, my nerves are shot. I got to get out of here. He says, and he had a stack of papers that high, people he had contacted, and he talked like at one time he was going to get a lawyer and tried to do it legally, you know. But he obviously didn't have a whole lot of money, and he said it was going to cost him $750 just to get a lawyer to read his complaint, you know. And so he said, I'm not doing it, you know. So much for that. When I got home, I got on the internet and I went to Google. And I Googled various sites of Pet Suite, 8 different places. And as far as I could tell, there's no residential houses next to these facilities, you know, as far as I can tell. And right here, we've got 5 houses. 5 houses right there that in direct contact with this facility, you know. And, you know, not a one of you, not nobody in this audience here would want to have up to 200 dogs in their backyard, you know. Nobody. I've lived there for 52 years. I had cows. When I first moved there as a 19-year-old kid, I had cows next to me. My children grew up there. And we played out in the backyard, and you know, this is my home we're talking about. We're not talking about, you know, we're talking about a dog facility, but I'm trying to protect my home. You know, this is my home. I don't want to have to move off. I don't want to sit here day after day and wait till 8 o'clock at night till it gets quiet. You know, I don't want that. Scott says it could be worse. Well, me and my neighbors, we thought, well, what could be worse than 200 dogs in your backyard barking, you know? You just think about it, if a dog only barked 2 times, just 2 times, how many barks is that when you got through the day with that many dogs, you know? What could you put there? It would be worse. It's too small for a rock crusher. One of my neighbors said they might put, you know, it could put a trash dump there, but you know, that was a joke, sort of. It degrades our neighborhood. What's it going to do to the Alexander's property and the Burris property? You know, like I said, you've put the dumpster now over on the other side. I mean, you haven't made the smell go away. You haven't made the flies go away. They're still there. They're just in a different location. They've done a lot of misleading here. They want the planning commission, and they didn't tell the truth, you know. Mr. Waters down here the other night, he was asking about the 16 pins in the back of the facility, and he was getting the runaround, you know. Well, what pins you talk? They're on the inside. You know, he was just, you know, it was total confusion. They didn't want to talk about it, it seemed to me. They didn't want to talk about those pins, you know. But the one that beats it all is they say the dogs are going on. They told me, and I guess they've told y'all, there would only be 3 dogs at a time out. 3 dogs at a time. They're coming out 3 times a day for 15 minutes. Well, it would take 14 hours at that rate to get the dogs out just one time. 14 hours. And they're going to bring them out three times a day, but it takes 14 hours just to get them out one time a day. And there's a video, and Scott, you saw the video, and it's not a promotional video. That's the way they got it to do to get the dogs out in the time they've got allotted. You know, it's not promotional. You know it's not. Like I said, I'm fighting for my house. I'm fighting to sit out on my back patio and rest. And I'm retired. I don't need to be worrying about dogs barking, and you know. And I'm fighting for my neighbors too, because I've got 2 widow ladies, 2 widow women that live in front of me, and they're not able to come up here and talk like they need to. I've lived. Do I need? I deserve the same right as any other citizen in Hendersonville. If I lived in Blue Ridge, you wouldn't even think about putting the dog pen up there next to their property. You wouldn't even think about it. I deserve the same right as any citizen in Hendersonville. Down on Walton Ferry Road, I need the same, you know, treated the same way as they are. You wouldn't put it down there in their neighborhood. I'm just as good as any other citizen in Hendersonville. Because I live on Burris Avenue, you think you can just dump it in my backyard? Nobody would want this in their backyard. Not even you, Scott. You just don't admit it. I'm not against building on this property. My neighbors are not against building on this property. I will be glad when they do build on it, because I'm tired of coming up here and I guess it sounds like I'm fussing, but the The gentleman on the end down there, Mr. Robinson, I think his name, the last meeting, he said it came to the board with a flawed vote, and you know it did. It was flawed. The planning commission was, they wasn't told the truth, you know. And you know when somebody doesn't tell the truth, you know what you call that, don't you? But Miss Petrelli, she hit the nail on hit the hammer, hit the nail right on the head. She showed a lot of courage and leadership. She told this board, and she told the people from Pet Sweets, they got a good facility. It's okay. You know, I'm not out to do them in or nothing. But she told them they've got the wrong location, and she's got locations in her district that she can put it in. And I appreciate, you stood up. It showed courage, because I'm sure there's probably a clique here somewhere, People, you've helped me, I'll help you, and it don't matter, it's a clique. I'm sure it is. This should be a quick vote. You're either for it or you're against it. There's nothing you can do to control these dogs barking. There's nothing. When they're in that environment, they're nervous, they're excited. And that's just what dogs do. They're wild. I mean, they're blood, they got a bloodline from lion. They come from wolves, And every day, there's police cars and EMS and fire engines and stuff run right up and down the road there. And these dogs have never been that close to these sirens, and they are loud. So you remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's not a single one of you would want this in your backyard. I know that's true. Will you admit it? The Bible also says, help the weak. Me and my neighbors right now are weak. We need your help. Please vote this down. Thank you. And Scott, I want to thank Scott and Pat for coming Saturday to talk to us. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you going to see Miss Alexander. Her earphones, her earpieces were stopped up at the time, and I don't think she even heard what you said, But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Chuck, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of February 25, 2020 meeting minutes. Entertain a motion to approve our minutes from February 25th, 2020. We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor of approving our meeting minutes from February 25th, 2020, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passed unanimously. We have no citizen, I'm sorry? We have one abstention. What's our abstentions?
Are we supposed to be voting over there?
We're going to do it just like roll call vote. If we typically would not do a roll call vote, and it's likely to be unanimous, we're going to continue doing that.
Oh.
So who are our abstentions? So we have two abstentions? Okay. So that passes 10-2. We have committee reports. Finance Committee, Chairman Cunningham.
No report.
Here we go. There we go.
No report this week, Mayor. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. General Committee, Chairman Sprouse.
Yes, General Committee met tonight. We had Resolution 2020-9 dealing with Alexander property. The amended plan came back to us. It was recommended to the board. We also had Resolution 2020-12 dealing with transfer of codes department funds for scanning project, resolution for the final development plan of Anderson Park, and then we had a series of personnel changes that were previously discussed last month in a workshop in General Committee. All of those were recommended and will be coming to the board at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Sprouse. Chairman Brown, Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. We approved our minutes from February 11th, 2020 meeting. We also approved a resolution, and we added it to our agenda earlier for a grant for 3 police officers. That's a 75-25 grant for a 3-year period. That grant will probably not know on that until somewhere around in October. So we'll prepare for that as if it's going to happen at budget time. We also had a discussion, lengthy discussion on Code Red and tornado sirens. We had some, our citizens were in there as well. What it boils down to, after last Tuesday, there's been more discussion about that. I'd like Chief Bush to come up and talk about Code Red in just a second, or you can go ahead and come. But I've asked Commander Hobsmeyer and Chief Bush to reach out to folks that deal in tornado sirens to bring us some information as requested by Vice Mayor and the rest of our committee to take a look at what sirens would mean to our city, where we would put them at, how many we would need, so on and so forth. So hopefully in the next month or so we'll be getting some of that information. Chief, if you could come and talk about Code Red, we certainly need to get some more people signed up for it. It's a tool that can be very useful to you. It put me on my feet at 1:30 in the morning the other night, and I don't do good on my feet at 1:30 in the morning, but especially when there's activity like that. But I will say that we did have a discussion on Fire Station 7 over in the Durham Farm area. We have a lot that we already own that if we build on it, we're going to have to go up to 2 stories on our fire hall. We also have another lot that's been offered to us that is quite a bit larger. If we build on it, we can build one single level, but we will have to backfill that quite a bit in order to do it. Either way, we're going to have to spend money, either going up or backfilling. Probably the bigger lot would be the best for us, but Mr. Cassidy is working on some preliminary plans to give us a better idea and a feel for that. I've asked Chief Bush to come and talk about Code Red. More people that can get signed up Code Red, the better off we'll be as a citizen. Chief.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So after the events of March the 3rd, tornadoes, the weather, we had some conversations, lots of conversations, social media, phone calls. So we started digging pretty deep into this because, again, part of public safety's responsibility is to provide layers or protection for our citizens. So these are all facts that we know for sure, 100%. And speaking with Code Red, there was a 12:35 p.m. that night, there was a tornado warning that was put out. We reached, at that particular time, 275 folks by phone, 58 by email, 312 by text. 10 minutes later, we submitted another, not we, but the National Weather Service through Code Red, submitted another tornado warning that encompassed 12 more folks by telephone, 2 more by email, and 17 by text. So the original plume or path of travel was designed by the meteorologist and the National Weather Service. That's how they decided how things were going to be transmitted through the Code Red system. Not everybody in Hendersonville was alerted to a tornado warning. If you watched the news a couple of days before, they were calling 4 to 6 inches of rain. They reduced it to 1 to 3 with the chances for tornadoes. I'm pretty positive that we posted something on our Facebook page, department-wide, that talked about that because the conditions were very conducive to tornadoes or the possibility of tornadoes. The disturbing part for us as an organization is the fact that we only have 1,098 people in our city that are signed up for weather alerts. 1,098 people out of 60-something thousand folks that are signed up for weather alerts. The system is only as good as the folks that are signed up for it. So we've looked at that. We think there's some things that we can do moving forward. We're talking about doing a video, putting it out on Channel 3 and the city's webpage, the fire department's webpage, possibly the police departments as well, of step-by-step instructions to encompass more folks and what Code Red can do for them. Also, we're going to talk about hosting events at fire stations, have an event maybe once every 2 or 3 months at a different station, and encourage folks to come and stop by. We'll sign you up, or you can fill out the paperwork if we get an overabundance of those, and then through the week we'll designate somebody and we'll start signing folks up ourselves. The last time we sent out an emergent Code Red through the fire department was a couple of years ago, and it encompassed only 4,000 people. Again, those are low numbers for the service that Code Red can provide. There's several things that come into play with this. I have the plume. I know exactly where they laid the plume out for the tornado to move. Without going too much into detail, I don't know how much detail you folks want. We spent a lot of time talking about it in public safety. I'll be glad to answer questions at my office, email, whatever you choose to do. You can also go to the city website, www.hvtn.org, find the department tab on the upper left corner, find the departments midway down, click on that tab, click on the fire department tab, and there's a code red announcement right there on that page. As soon as you see that, you can click on that, and it'll take you step by step as far as what you need to do to sign up for Code Red. Again, I implore with folks, this system's only as good as what we enter it, what we put into it. We can do all the alert systems you want, but if we're turning our phones off at night, if we're muting them, if we're not answering them when they call, some of that responsibility falls on ourselves. But we want to make sure that we're offering layers of protection for everybody in this city. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. I will be glad to answer anything from the board or anybody else if they have questions.
Chairman Brown, anything else?
No, just please be vigilant. It's a great tool. It's only as good if you use it. If you don't use the tool, it's not any good. So,
walking through it right now, we've got it pulled up there, and it kind of walks you through. If you scroll up on that page, you'll see a tab down that says Launch Code Red or Go Code Red Now. You can click on that tab, the one right there in the center. You can click on that, and that'll take you straight to the site to start signing up for it. And again, if you have issues, please call our office, and we'll take your name and information. If we need to do the work for you, we certainly will. But there's only two type emergencies that you can get. It's general and emergent. Emergent sends you everything, and you will be notified regardless of what the situation is. You cannot opt out of emergent. You don't have that choice. General, you can opt out of those, but that's going to take you out of some stuff. So again, if a tornado warning comes out and it's not citywide, if it's not emergent, chances are most of our folks won't get it. So again, Code Red is a valuable tool. We endorse that. We think that it's very viable for us to use within the city, and we encourage folks to use it. And again, there's so many folks that have moved in here that probably didn't even know that we had that to offer. But we're certainly going to step our game up and introduce that to the public to make sure they're aware of that.
Chief Bush, we've got a question from Alderman Sprouse.
Yes, sir.
Chief, if I remember correctly, when we were transitioning to Code Red, before that could all be set up, we put some money in your budget for weather radios, just to provide those free. Do you think that that's something that we could do in this next year's budget just to augment that sort of thing for people who don't have cell service? Because the number that kept coming back to us during that discussion was it would be cheaper for us to provide a weather radio to every home in Hendersonville than it would be for us to provide sirens. Now, I know that the numbers could possibly change, but could you give us a little bit about, did you have a lot of people pick up those radios? Would you want to think it would be something worth pursuing in the next budget year?
So since I've been in office, as far as folks using weather radios, we have not had a whole lot of folks that come to us and ask for weather radios. You may have stepped out those 5 years that I've been chief where the money was allotted for weather radios. I think there's a conversation going back over the minutes, maybe back to 2011, 2012, that there was some money appropriated through the Learn Not to Burn program for weather radios. To my knowledge, I don't think in any of my budgets since I've been chief that we've had that conversation. I'm not saying I disagree with that. We'll do whatever the board would like for us to do. Layers, as we discussed in the public safety, whether it's Code Red, tornado sirens, weather radios, whatever it may be, layers of protection is what's the best for the because
the reason why I was asking that is there's nothing that can be more alerting than the alarm I can put right next to my pillow. And so but I do recognize that there are people who do not have cell phones. There are people who have cell phones who don't have reliable service inside their home. So I'm thinking if we could do as a stopgap, if you would consider in your next year's budget, consider asking for some money, because if we can have the effectiveness of Code Red, but then also supplement that for residents with weather radios, if they have a demonstrated need, that we could provide that to them for no cost. I think that would be probably the best solution. Because please consider that in your budget.
So we haven't had our meeting yet with the city administrator and finance for our budgets. I've already submitted my budget, but obviously that can be a point of conversation. I will do that, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Campbell, do you have a question for Chief Bush?
I just want to make a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on just a second. We decided a couple weeks ago not to have discussion about the report, and so I think I'm giving a reasonable chance to ask questions. What do y'all want me to do? That was a decision by the board to not have general discussions right here. We've got what's on the floor, where we are on the agenda, is a report from our chairman who asked somebody to come speak here. I think if you got a question, I think we can go ahead.
I just want to make a statement related to what he's saying regarding the plume,
And I-
because I lived in the plume.
And I think
just
what I'm
want to relate
saying
it to
is
the people
that,
that are here that might not have got a warning. I got 5.
I'll be happy to address that since I brought up that point
well,
originally.
we're not going to get into discussion about this report. It's something that we need to address probably at committee or something we could address later on, because we were very serious a couple weeks ago about keeping the meeting moving, and I'm doing my best to do that.
Yes, and I can address that. I'd be happy to.
We're going to stay on the topic right here, and Alderman Petrelli is the next one to speak. Did you have a question for the chief?
Yes,
Okay, super, thank you.
thank you, Mayor. So my question for the chief, initially, the day after the tornado, was why citizens in Hendersonville received different messages. I personally received flash flooding, others received, other weather alerts, and then as Alderman Campbell just said, he actually received a warning. So the question is, I asked to put on public safety tonight the discussion on sirens, and as the Chairman Brown stated, the discussion will continue, and I think putting all options on the table is very important. And I know that Alderman Sprouse was unable to attend public safety because he had to move on to general, and we were not there yet, but there were further discussions than that. But I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done to protect the citizens of Hendersonville. Thank you.
Alderman Robertson, do you have a question for our chief?
I do, and it's a technical question. So will the
Maybe I can
alerts,
give you an answer.
will the alerts come across Alexa? You know, the new,
It's a good question. I do not know the answer to that, but I certainly will reach out to them tomorrow and find out that answer for you.
yeah, because, yeah, well, and I appreciate the additional educational efforts to letting people know, because my wife, well, I won't comment. That's the only question I have. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, for trying to push us along. That's all.
Alderman Cunningham, a question for our chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, it was just mentioned about the weather radios, and back in 2011, the cost of them were $25 each.
That's pretty much in line. You might be able to get
Yeah,
one
and
for
if
30.
we have 18,000 households, that's a total cost of $450,000, if that cost is still valid. And it would cost us approximately, at that time, about $600,000 to install 20 sirens that were recommended back at that time in 2011, because Matt Stamper and I, sponsored that, tried to sponsor that legislation. My question is, could you also find out the cost of the weather radios in today's world?
I think that's part of the research that we're going to be doing per the public safety's request, is that me and Commander Harbersmeyer reach out to a couple of vendors and no fees, and just see what they can do and do a study like they did for the radios that we bought into last year. They typically do those studies for free and let you know kind of how many sirens you need, what maybe the typical cost for each of those systems would be. That certainly is part of what we plan on doing. Is that not correct, sir?
Mm-hmm. And also, we had budgeted $5,000 to purchase 200 radios back in March 22nd of 2011 as well. And we gave them out at a type of an event, a park event that people were able to get. And we still had them left over. So I don't think we properly advertised that, the availability of them to the public.
We can simply, if that's the route we decide to go, we can simply do a weather radio canvas like we do smoke detectors now.
Yeah.
We can go door to door and offer them to folks. That's kind of what we're about, is making sure, again, that people are protected. That's our job, and that's our main goal.
Okay. And I appreciate you doing the research, and I'm with Alderman Petrelli, and I will kind of die on the hill for this one,
I understand.
for the sirens. Thank you.
Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you. Code Red, does it operate on a radius based on your address?
The mobile app does, yes, sir. The regular app that you sign up for on your computer is based off your physical location. So when you put in your address, again, the plume that was sent out for the tornadoes was from the National Weather Service, a meteorologist, based on their facts, what they know, and the close proximity of that actual tornado. I don't know if that answers your question or
Yeah,
not.
it does. So if there's a wreck at exit 6, Vietnam Vets, does everyone within 25 miles get that, or just
It depends on who sends it out, sir. That's a training issue. as we've discussed, we know that we have some faults. People may get promoted. In the fire service, and I think in the police department as well, the only upper level command officers have access to that, and probably lieutenants on the road, if I'm not speaking out of sergeants and up for the police department. So if they're on the street and something happens, they can set out, it's called a polygon, I refer to it as a plume in the fire service, but it's a polygon, and they can spread that out as far as they want to. And then if they send it out as emergent, it goes out citywide. And that's just a communication piece for us to train our folks for.
That may be what I'm getting at. Citywide, does that mean zip code?
Yes, sir. Emergent within the city of Hendersonville limits, wherever their address is, if we send it out emergent, it goes out to how many ever subscribers are signed up for it.
Within the zip code or the city limits?
Within
we feel like there's an issue where some of the Hallaton area, that's a 37066 zip code, and Gallatin address, are not getting certain notifications because they're Gallatin, not Hendersonville.
If you would gather some of those and get them to me, I'll be glad to reach out to Code Red if they've signed up for it and find out what's going on with that.
Thank you, and cut me off if this is illegal now. So, interesting, and I know, Mayor, you didn't push this, but I just don't know the rules. So, interesting, my family's from Alberton, Kentucky, and this may be public knowledge, but their siren did not go off during their EF2 because the agency did not hit the button or whatever. So like you said, nothing is foolproof. You have to have layers. And the fire chief up there is a client of mine, and he was saying that their studies are showing that more and more people are not keeping their phone at bedside and therefore are getting no alerts from their phone, and that more people are going back to utilizing weather radios because they're foolproof. So just interesting fact.
So I don't want to be contradictory to you, but nothing is foolproof.
Yeah.
100%. But yes.
I'll let off with layers.
Yes, layers is certainly the best way to go. Yes, sir, 100%. And I can say, I stay on top of the weather. I think all of you guys know, and gals, I've sent warnings out through BOMA, kept you abreast of flooding possibilities of that. I turn my phone on. I do the exact opposite. Rightfully so. I don't complain about that. That's just what I'm supposed to do. I got up the other night when I got the first severe thunderstorm warning at 12:11. It hit my phone. I got up because I knew they had been talking about it. And I woke up and saw my WeatherBug app on my telephone had sent out a tornado watch and a tornado warning. So I stayed up till 2:30 watching that event happen. Kind of a helpless feeling because I know if it's passing there in Mount Juliet and Lebanon, it could come right across the lake. And then certain parts of the peninsula are a severe threat for that. And I think that's what the plume covered in that, or the polygon. But again, there's different levels of how Code Red reaches out. If you've got an answering machine, if it's a landline and it gets an answering machine, then it'll leave a message. It'll stop or cut off. You have the direct line, which is somebody actually answers and says hello, and then it'll go with a message. Then you have an OI, which means an operator intercept, which means the number's been disconnected. And there are those folks. They don't change when they change cell service or they lose a phone. That number will no longer exist. And then the last one is the TO, which means timed out. And that means nobody answered. A machine did not. But the good thing about the timed out process is they'll call 2 more times on the backside of that. They'll keep calling in hopes that they'll wake somebody up. Yeah. So there's layers within Code Red that work just as well as also.
Great.
Alderman Sprouse.
My question's for the committee chairman. Is that appropriate?
I think I think the way you stated a couple weeks ago was there's questions for future action, I think is what.
I'll be happy to speak as to what I said a few weeks ago if we need to do that. Chairman Brown, is this something that was discussed in your committee tonight?
Yeah.
Was it something that you felt that the urgency, either because of the importance of it or because of the timeliness of the subject, was something that needed to be escalated to this board and to the general community?
Not sure I understand your question.
Did you feel like the discussion y'all had tonight in committee, even though you had the discussion in committee, revealed information that needed to be escalated to the full board as soon as possible?
No.
Yeah? Then I think that this discussion satisfies the requirements that we talked about. I very much want to keep this board's committee meetings, committee reports from replacing committee reports, that we have open mic. But just like Mrs. Cunningham has previously brought forward things that have been reported in Finance Committee that needed to be reported to the full board, just like I have brought forward one thing that from General Committee that needed to be reported to the full board. I think it's highly appropriate that this is not replacing a discussion that happens in committee. What it is it's sharing very important, very urgent information that was revealed in committee with the entire discussion. And I thank you, Chairman Brown, for doing that.
You're welcome.
Chairman Brown, anything else from your report?
No, thanks, Chief. I know that was a lengthy report, just got a lot of information thrown at you. The biggest thing I can tell you, if you're not signed up for Code Red, get signed up for Code Red. Thank you.
Chairman Brown, thank you. Chairman Skidmore, Public Works.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate the time. We have no official report this evening. The recycling bids that they've been presented, and we should put that out on the website, the Hendersonville website. So if anybody's interested in, it should be on there tomorrow morning, if not tonight, when you go home to take a look. And one thing I do want to tell the chief, I guess, one thing, and I didn't want to get lost with all the dialogue on the tornado. I want to say, and it was either 89 or 93. It might have been 93. Al Sorrell, God rest his soul, he was a fine alderman, had presented sirens that we had here in Hendersonville, and we did have them here. They were very costly back then. The cost might not be anything like it was back then, but the city of Hendersonville, at one time, we did have tornado sirens here, and it was the reason why I know is because the emergency management committee really came under the guise of the Public Works. So my point is this: if you would, you might want to look at Public Works and our archives that might be able to help pinpoint, because a study's already been done, and I'm not sure that our city has grown that much to where those sirens are still around here in town, or the poles are. The sirens are obsolete. They don't even work anymore. I'm not going to debate the merits of that. This is not the point or the time to what happened to them and the reasons why. But those points in the city very well may still hold. So you might just want to have somebody in Public Works take a look and find that in archives. And it might even be switched over to public safety now. I don't know. But I wanted to offer the chairman and yourself and also the police department, the idea of that might be of a benefit, But anyway, to let the Board of Aldermen know, we are taking requests now, so when you're driving in town about potholes, let us know and call the Public Works Department. Even if it's raining, let us know about the potholes, because we know we have plenty to go around in the city. And we want to get those corrected as soon as possible, because it is warming up. Thank you, Mayor.
Chairman Skidmore, thank you. Chairman Campbell, Capital Projects.
No report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Commission, Alderman Woodcock. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. You're good.
We met last week, had a great meeting. We approved the final development plan for Anderson Park at Indian Lake Market, the development behind Lowe's. We approved the following site plans, also Anderson Park at Indian Lake Market. I don't know how to say this, Avindia at Indian Lake, which is a age-restricted apartment building. We approve the site plan for Cornerstone Primary Health Care, which is basically a parking lot expansion, nothing big there. The site plan for Durham Farms Phase 2, Section 26, Phase 3, Section 29. And I had a little setback issue with the Hazel Path Mansion. As some of you may recall, we approved their ability to hold events there. We corrected that issue and it was approved, and that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Woodcock. Next is a report from our Interim City Administrator, David Marb.
Thank you, Board. Got quite a few things going on in the departments back there. Back in the parks, we're getting ready to do a ribbon cutting with naming the park road after Conway Twitty Lane. That's at 2 o'clock on Thursday. If you'd like to come over there by the football field, at going to start gathering about 1:30. We're entertaining the idea of a summer college baseball league, play about 40 games on field 3, and it'll be one of the upper echelon baseball college players can come. They stay here for the summer and stay with host families and things like that. And I do know the Cape Cod Baseball League in Massachusetts is really popular. It's similar to this. These kids are getting ready to go into the pros and into the minor leagues, and it's a really good league. And so Full Count Baseball with the Ministry of Baseball in Nicaragua is based out of Hendersonville, is going to sponsor that league. And so that ought to be really neat. ADA coordinator, ADA coordinator moving forward. It's 6 candidates. They're narrowed down to 4, and they're doing interviews at this time. So that's moving forward. I'll keep you posted. Plains examiner, it's moving but slow. We've had a couple people interested. Really a very narrow opening here to get somebody in the plans review. People working for companies and making a lot more than they could come to work for the city. So Greg's working back there, and we may have to outsource some of that just because we don't have anybody that's applied that's even qualified at this point. So Greg and Robert and I are going to get together and see what we can do. As you know, records request is way up. Our employees are handling them best they can. Budget meetings start. Robert's collecting the budgets and getting the revenues and things like that, and we're going to meet shortly, and then the department heads, we all start meeting next week with that, and then move forward. HVAC, Country Hill's going in. They finally got bid, and they've had some logistic problems with where it's going to locate. It's in the ceiling, and they're going to try to take it out of the ceiling this time because it costs so much more to put it in the ceiling and to repair it and things like that. So they've got a couple of closets adjacent to the restrooms. They're going to try to put it in there. Stormwater project's going well. Trash complaints are very low. Waste Pro's working hard to get those down to as negligible as possible. I went by the other day, it was Thursday or Friday of last week, and we were 8 or 10 one day, and it was 15 one day. So they're getting them down where they need to be. Last thing, several departments wanted to reclassify a bunch of employees. Kind of told them at this point we're not going to do that reclassification kind of in the middle of the budget year. We're going to wait till we start the budget process and then talk about that with each department. So, yeah, the reclassifications, we're doing one now with Sarah because she's going to be the supervisor of the ADA, but there are several other pockets in the city that they're requesting to reclassify some employees in the department. And the departments are fine with waiting to do the budget process. We need to see where our staffing levels are, who's got positions open, what positions are available, what positions they think need to be moved up, and then we'll do the study with that during the budget process, so it'll kind of all fit in together. And I did send you that email about SmartWorks. I don't know if we need to have a special committee meeting about that, or at this point in time, I don't know where that is with, I kind of came in on the tail end of the SmartWorks and I'm just playing catch up over the last 18 months. And so communicated to you, Finance Committee, directed me to respond to SmartWorks, and we did, and he sent back an answer, and of course he didn't like it, of course, but so this kind of, I don't know where that ball is at this point in time, so I'll leave that up to the board for discussion at some point in time. Any questions?
Alderman Robertson.
I wanted to ask you a question that I know is a health issue, and I don't want to alarm anyone, but I just wonder, has the staff been having any discussions on the coronavirus and what to do? I know that the fire department deals a lot with sick citizens, but also from the staff perspective, Dave, have y'all been thinking about, I don't know, like things to improve hygiene and, just kind of give us an update, because I know there's a lot of interest and a lot of concern, and I just want to be vigilant.
Yes, sir. That's a great question. And I was speaking at Rotary the other night, and Mr. Chief Bush was there, and they asked that same question, and he got up and took the chair from me. And no, but he's got. Don't sit down. No, don't sit down. That's what the city administrator is supposed to do. He's kind of delegated. He's got good people around him. So Mr. Chief Bush has got an explanation. He can handle it better than I could.
Thank you.
No. So first off, there are no confirmed cases in Hendersonville, 100%. There are some things, measures that we're taking, department, and then I sent an email out to HR, and then I think I sent it out to BOMA as well about steps that should be taken or just some considerations. By no means am I trying to run anybody else's department, but certainly let's just take common areas like this. We meet, the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. The cleaning company comes, I think, once or twice to City Hall, maybe a week. I don't know what the contract calls for, but I said we might consider cleaning an extra time or two a month to make sure that we're keeping germs away. I know at my staff, we're talking going to wear street clothes in to work. You're going to wear your uniform at work, and then you're going to wash it before you go home, put it in your locker, and you're going to put your street clothes back on to reduce the chance of passing any kind of germs or anything like that that they may have received on a call. I will say we're stocking 4 in case there is an incident. Decon, mass decon, we're all ready for all that if there was to be an incident. I don't want people to freak out about it. We're not carrying on a whole lot of conversation about it for those simple reasons. But you can go to Kroger, you can go to Publix, and you can see folks are wiping stuff out left and right. We're not in a stage that we should be panicked. The simple things are to wash your hands. If you're feverish, you got a cough, you're sneezing, you need to reduce yourself and not be around anybody. Quarantine yourself at home. If your condition worsens, treat it just like they would the flu. Again, just general hygiene, washing your hands is the #1 way to prevent the spread of any kind of germs. Don't touch your face. We have even gone to the fact of, like they talked about in Nashville, bumping elbows. Restrict shaking hands, and that's nothing personal against anybody. It's just everybody looking out for each other. So yes, sir, we're taking steps to be ready if something does happen, but we're not trying to over-publicize that for the fact of making people too concerned before anything does happen. I hope that answers your question.
Alderman Brown.
I do. 2 weeks ago I wasn't here. I'm sorry. Mrs. Brown had a physical issue I had to be with her. But I do have some questions that I would like to ask and get answers for concerning SmartWorks and the contracts and a couple emails that were sent and stuff that involve my name. I'm very willing to do that now, but I'm also willing to do that in a committee. So
Strictly, it's up to the pleasure of the board at this point.
well, it sounds like y'all maybe changed a rule 2 weeks ago that we can't ask questions or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you can ask a question.
I'm not real sure well, here's what Robert's Rules of Order says, and that is that a committee report is given in writing and is presented to the board, and it's given to the board ahead of time, and the board accepts that or rejects it. There aren't questions, there's not discussion. I think you mentioned that it's likely to be discussed by a committee again. That might be the best way to go. However, anybody can decide what they want to do up here with 7 votes.
Can I respond to that? Steve, would you allow me?
Yeah.
The one thing I would mention is, and I mentioned this before, maybe not here, but the city administrator's report is not a committee report. That's completely separate and should not be treated that way. And so I don't know about Robert's rules, but I'm sure those dealt with committee reports. So Dave is our top employee of the city and should be dealt with differently. So there are going to be issues that he's going to bring up that we're going to have to make comments on or ask questions for. So I don't know where we'll deal with that, but I would just say that's a completely different situation than Alderman Skidmore when he gives a report, although his are riveting, but still, so his is, but that would be completely different, would be my comment. So I would think if you've got a question, go ahead. If you want to, refer it to committee, that's fine.
Okay.
Special meeting.
These are just questions. As you can see, I have a lot of emails here. I've read for a month now, trying to educate myself on SmartWorks and where are you going?
Don't leave.
This is your report, and I'm in the middle of it. I don't know.
I guess I'll just sit down.
Trying to slip. You can't slip out when you have a salmon-colored top on. Solomon. And I think they're good questions. I think they're good questions for me. I would, and I guess I've got to ask the mayor and Mr. Robertson and Mr. Kirk, who's not here, how did we get here? We started with a contract for a
Hold
firm
on, hold
to
on,
do
hold
a
on.
search.
This is our city administrator's report. If you want to ask him some questions, feel free. Otherwise, maybe we need to meet in committee, and I can be there then.
I'll be glad to ask you the questions. I don't know how you're going to answer them, but how did we get here?
Well, when I came on board in December, we briefly after that got an invoice for $147,000, which I had no idea where it came from. Okay, it came from SmartWorks, but I had no idea on the history. And so made a couple phone calls to them and asked some people that were in, when I was here as a parks director, we started that conversation like 3 years ago. But I didn't know where it fell the last 18 months to 2 years. And so I asked some people who were involved in that committee, Mr. Free, Timothy, Rod, the mayor. I mean, we all kind of had a conversation, Director Gilly back in Parks, about where this thing had come from and how they got from one contract to another. And then a company went out of business and then it didn't go out of business. And so again, I was kind of like, y'all's situation here, I didn't really know how it got to that point until I got that $147,000. And then, Robert and I had a conversation with them on the phone and just tried to get some information from them, why they thought we owed them the money. And again, I'm still not sure whether we owe them money or not, to be honest with you. Because in that 18-month period, I don't know what work was done. Again, I just see emails and some notes, but again, it's the 2 or 3 rabbit trails that I had trouble following.
Okay, how do we go about finding the answer to that question? What do you think? 'Cause I'll continue to ask questions because I want answers to my questions.
Probably the thing that probably needs to happen is that everybody that has been involved from day one needs to sit down with a particular committee, whether it's finance committee or general committee or somebody. All the staff has been involved from the beginning until this point, which is most of the staff, most of the department heads, need to sit down in a meeting or a committee meeting and just find out where we are. Because again, I still don't know all the back history on all of it, okay? And some of the other people that do, again, Eddie was involved in it, is Alderman, several department heads were, Timothy Whitten. I mean, there was just a slew of people down through the 18 months to 2 years that there were different people involved in this company, and then this company was bought out by this one, and so on. And it was just like, it's like a puzzle. So, yeah, you're right. There it is right there. So, I don't know that we can solve it tonight, Mr. Brown. And I think, I don't know of a legal opinion. Mr. Bradley, he and I had a conversation about that it might be better to go back to committee and get all this stuff straight, because we could sit here for hours and go through some of this stuff and not be anywhere closer than we were when we started.
Okay, I agree with that. I think my questions will probably be too difficult to be answered right now, because it is your report, so I've got to ask the questions to you, but I actually have questions for the mayor and Mr. Robertson, since my name was involved in emails going back and forth with him. So I guess I would ask them to come to a committee meeting, whenever that is. If the chairman of the finance committee would add this to her agenda for March the 24th, I will certainly be there with bells on to get answers to those questions. I will have more at that time concerning bonuses, that the cell tower people are supposed to give us when they contract, and some other things. I would like to ask Mr. Free to be there, Mr. Gilly to be there. Everybody's name that's in these emails I would like to see at that committee meeting that night. And we make sure that happens.
You probably have to show me those emails. I don't know whose names are in those emails.
Well, Mayor, I had to get these emails myself. Your name's on a lot of them, especially one that I asked you a question on, and you deferred to Alderman Robertson to answer the question. So maybe you need to go get your emails and read them, partner. Thank you.
Wow. Alderman Cunningham.
I'm sorry I'm not treating you well.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to suggest that we have a joint meeting between Finance and General Committee and all the parties involved, special called in 2 weeks. This way, everybody could have a chance to gather their thoughts and their emails and their documents together. Like I said, like Dave had said, I don't know where we got from point A to now point D, where we finally have contracted with a vendor.
Let's see, there's some questions about that too.
Yeah, there
As far
was,
as you guys voted on something one meeting, the next meeting you rescinded, and so, again, it's very convoluted in the fact that we need to sit them down around a table and try to put these pieces together.
Yeah, and all parties involved need to be present at the meeting in 2 weeks.
I agree.
So I propose that we have a joint meeting between Finance and General Committee in 2 weeks.
I'll work with the members to come up with the time.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the time, so, because it'll be a long meeting.
Yeah, and that's my question.
And we need to get this straightened out, because I have tons of emails, I have timelines, but we had a conference call with the SmartWorks people. They're saying that the board is culpable now because we got copied on an email. I mean, it's kind of bizarre, to be honest with you. So.
Ms. Cunningham, I just question, since the meeting may be a little longer, if we try to set it like at 6 o'clock on the night before the board meeting, we may not even get started. I
Yeah,
suggested
we
that,
may
can we
need
do
to
it on
do
another
it
night?
maybe the night before.
Like a Wednesday night, like Wednesday right after the board meeting, or?
Before.
Or before. I would say before. Let's do it Monday night, the 23rd. Is it 23rd?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I just,
Chairman Sprouse, is the 23rd, is it 23rd? Monday night before the next meeting,
that's a park.
March 23rd.
Let's just figure that out.
Yeah,
Figure
let's-
out a time
Okay.
outside the
All
meeting.
right, so let's
Parks board
head-
meets that night.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
have something
1,
that
2,
evening,
3,
but
4.
it could go a little bit longer.
Oh, the Parks meets
That
at-
afternoon, I should say.
Okay, I could
Okay,
do
I-
it anytime, either anytime during the day or night that day.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. Thank
Alderman
you, Mayor.
Woodcock.
Good.
Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Petrelli, I think, wanted to make a comment. I know I'm ahead of her, but
Okay.
she was
Okay, welcome back.
Energetic.
Alderman Shelley.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had something specific to that subject matter. So I know in the past when we've tried to get to the bottom of things, sometimes we've not had everybody that could attend those meetings. So I'm concerned that the folks who need to be there won't be there again. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I just, what we'll do is try to come up with a time and send everybody, give them enough notice, and the staff is here during the day, so we could do it late in the day, late in the afternoon, while the staff's still here, and, so we're not here till midnight. I mean, that, again, it's strictly up to you when you want to meet.
Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you, Alderman Woodcock.
You're welcome. I'm perfectly okay with this going back to finance. The only thing that is kind of confusing me is we met, and while we didn't do an exact timeline, it was pretty clear that the original company had a contract with us. They would be paid only when we made money, and then that company went out of business, and then no contract was signed with SmartWorks. That's what the room full of people agreed to.
Right.
Staff and elected officials. So are we wanting to pay a company we did not have a contract with, and that's why we're going back to committee to review it again? Or are we just simply trying to confirm what was stated at Finance Committee? Because I asked clearly, if there's someone that's got different information, tell us, because, it's not like we don't want to pay it, but based on what we're being told, there is no obligation that we owe this company money.
And probably, Mr. Woodcock, probably getting the other party involved during this meeting too would help solve a lot, because I don't know, I mean, he's in Las Vegas, some of the conversations I've had with him. And again, this rabbit trail goes 3 or 4 different ways. And again, I don't know when this company bought the other one and took over the old company that we had a contract with. And then in one of the emails says they went out of business in January of 2019.
Right.
But they're still in business now.
And then, and I could have this wrong, but I think it was even discussed that the work that they're charging us for was done based on the original company that went out of business. It wasn't sold to another company. It went out of business, and the employees started another business. So
I don't know all the legal ramifications. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. Like I said, there's so many things that have happened in the time frame that I left as Parks Director and came back, and these things were going on. So, again, I just, SmartWorks, the Finance Committee, staff, just sit down around the table and then just hammer out and see where we are. I don't know what they're, of course, they went from 147 to like, what, 93 or 95,000.
Right.
But I'm like you, honestly, what did they do for 95,000? I want to see something on paper, you know. And
Yeah,
Robert does over here. Rob, the finance director's not going to pay a bill. He doesn't know what he's paying.
And I think, I don't know who made the motion, but obviously there's only 3 of us on the committee, and I think we said we feel we do not owe you this money. Prove to us that we do with a contract that we signed, you know, with something. So when you communicated to them, did they say, you know, maybe there's some miscommunication. Here's the exact details of why we feel like we owe you or why we should pay them 6 figures.
Given that back. That last email I sent you that I forgot to push the send button is the only response I got from him. He couldn't understand how he could make that decision without talking to them. I'm like, you know, where's the stuff in writing? Where's the contract, the signed contract? Where's the agreement? I mean, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
So it's.
And that's just going to open the door for a lot of people.
I understand.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and send some information out about a date with the committees, the 2 committees, and try to get all the parties involved. I agree with Ms. Petrelli that we need to make sure everybody is there so we can walk through this thing some kind of logical way and get to some kind of point to where we can agree to disagree and not pay them, agree to pay them. They may sue us. I don't have any idea what'll happen down the road. Okay, I have no idea what they're thinking or why they think we owe them money. So.
Alderman Brown.
Good.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Resolution 2020-9, this is a resolution to approve a final development plan for the Jack Alexander property, Lot 2, Pet Suites, and to add animal care and veterinarian services to the list of uses for the property. Alderman Woodcock. We have a motion and a second. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it permissible for me to, I'm getting conflicting information about what happened at the Planning Commission. Is it permissible for me to ask Darrell about
Sure, I think
what
that's fine.
went down, please?
He doesn't have to answer those questions, but I bet he will.
Yeah, I'll be as blunt so that there's no confusion.
Yeah.
Representative, I was the one asking questions about citizen input. You know, did they get the notification in the mail? Did you talk to the citizens? And the developer and the citizens were sitting together. So picture me looking at the citizens sitting next to the developer. Developer representative says, yes, we have communicated personally with the residents. Okay, I ended my questions. Shortly after that, we voted. One person voted no. They leave. We go on to the next topic, and everyone walks out. Marty Cook walks back in and is being very vocal about, hey, I need to say something about the last vote. I think we finished the next vote, allowed him to speak, and he said there was a miscommunication. We spoke with what we thought was a representative of the neighborhood. We did not speak to any neighbors personally about the new plan, nothing. And so then it became this whole, what do we do? And I can't remember exactly how we ended up doing this, but we decided that we would not revote. We would allow the citizens who did not sign up for public comments or citizen comments to speak. And we had a fairly lengthy dialogue back and forth. I said that I felt like it would have changed the vote, but not the outcome. Because I probably wouldn't have voted for it had I known that none of the citizens had been reached out to by the developer.
So they weren't notified either in verbally or in writing?
Not by the developer. If their property was within a boundary that we have to legally notify them, they received the letter in the mail from the city.
From our planning commission?
Yeah, exactly. And I think at least one of them received the letter and spoke to planning before the planning commission vote. I could have that wrong, but we allowed them time to speak. The only thing we did not do was cast a revote.
I got to interrupt real quick. Who made the second? Who made the second of this motion? I know you made the motion. Alderman Waters? Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that was the issue. You could say we should have went back and revoted. I can't remember why we didn't, but it would not have changed the outcome. It was very clear that maybe one vote would have changed, 2 votes would have changed, but it still would have passed planning commission and went on to general. And that's my honest assessment from speaking from someone who voted yes but would have voted no had I known the citizens had not been contacted.
And the planning commission was well aware that it could be up to 200 dogs.
That question was not asked, so I can't say that members knew.
If that question was asked, do you think that some people might have changed their votes?
Possibly, but I don't want to speak on their behalf.
All right.
I mean, we could have asked a lot of questions that night that didn't get asked, and it could have changed
Yeah.
everybody's vote, but I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
Any other questions about that?
Well, I do, but not for Alderman Woodcock.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Alderman Woodcock. Appreciate the clarification. There was some confusion, and it doesn't sound like it was deliberately done, but I think it's a good project, but I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around 200 dogs on Main Street and next to a residence. I understand that the property was sold as commercial. I get that. And I appreciate that the changes that the developer has made to the plans, moving the dumpster, moving the outdoor facilities for the dogs, and that sort of thing. But I'm having a problem with the location. I really, really am. Not having a problem with the facility itself, but with the location. If you could take it and put it someplace else besides Main Street and besides a residence. And then what is that going to do with the property next to it that hasn't been sold yet? I mean, there's limited uses that property will be able to be sold for, and what kind of business would be able to be established there. Those are just my comments right now, Mayor. Thank you.
Alderman Cunningham, thank you. Alderman Brown.
I'm not sure who to ask this, maybe Keith. What happened to the storage facility? I remember, we went to the mat pretty hard on the storage facility and in and out and argued and talked, and now we're down to dogs. Which I
Right.
got dogs, I like.
Right. We never heard exactly what happened. It just kind of went away. I think the assumption is that there were several other storage facilities. The one on Saundersville and Cinnamon Drive, that got under construction. So that and some other storage facilities came online. So it could have had something to do with that, but we're not really for sure. We didn't hear directly from the storage facility folks. We heard from the Pet Suites that they wanted to do this, but we really didn't hear the reason, why. But there was nothing like, I think somebody had brought up, was it something about drainage or something like that? And to our knowledge, we're not aware of a specific reason that the storage facility didn't work out.
Okay. I have one more question. That might be for you, might be for Marty, I don't know. Pate Montgomery LLC. Somebody back there from Pate Montgomery LLC? Other than Marty Cooper?
No. That's out of Alabama,
that's
the
people, I'm
developer
sorry.
said.
Okay, who's the owner now?
Who's the owner? Stan Payton is what the developer is saying.
And where's their place of business? Where they do business out
You
of?
might want to come up and answer. Yeah, that's okay.
Without objection, we're going to suspend the rules to allow the folks that are representing this project to speak as well as the neighbors.
Thank you.
Just give us your name when you come up, please.
Mike Leonard with Hogan Real Estate. Thanks again for hearing us tonight. Pate is the current owner of the property. We, Hogan Real Estate, have the property under contract to purchase with the intent of developing it as a Pet Suites, with the pictures of the buildings that you've seen. So,
Where do they do business every day out of?
Pet Suites?
Where's their office?
Corporately, they're out of the West Coast, but they have locations scattered throughout the U.S.
What's the closest one to Hendersonville, Tennessee?
We have one in Murfreesboro under construction, just getting ready to open soon, under construction in Hoover, Alabama, in Novi, Michigan. Those are the ones we are doing. There are other developers as well.
Now, this particular format is what you're talking about.
Correct. The format's varied a little bit. This one's actually a little smaller than what they've built in the last few versions. They were at think at some point early on, about 20,000 feet. We have a couple under construction at 14,000, and we actually built one in Louisville, Kentucky that's open, by the way. And then the last couple here, including the one here, is approximately 11,000 square feet.
Okay, but management is on the West Coast.
Well, corporate management is, but everybody kind of works remotely now. I think their operations or the operations personnel are actually out of Dallas, I believe. So
It's a little bit closer. Keep edging this way.
Yeah. Again,
You answered my question.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Brown, anything else?
No, sir.
Alderman Robertson, thank you, Alderman Brown.
Mr. Cook, would you like to add anything to this conversation? I've got a couple of questions to ask you. Before you talk, I want to commend you. After looking at the Planning Commission proceeding, I want to thank you once you determined that there was a problem with the neighbor not being able to speak, that you corrected that. So I want to thank you for that. That's very ethical, and I appreciate you calling that back to the Planning Commission to correct that. So my question is this. We have noise regulations in the city. Will this facility be able to consistently meet those noise regulations?
Well, they would have to, just like any other business or any other resident would, and I believe someone from the police department spoke to that at the last meeting as to how that would be handled, and that they would be responsible for complying with any ordinances that any other business or any other resident would.
So tell us what your client has been willing to make the changes. I was in general committee, but just kind of briefly of how your clients tried to address the concerns of the residents.
Sure, and we're appreciative of the fact that 2 weeks ago we got to be here and hear the concerns of each of you, and after that we diligently went back to the drawing board and tried to, by bullet point, take each of the concerns that this body had with the project and address those. One of the major concerns was the location of the dumpster and how close it was to the Alexander, what's left of the Alexander property. This was originally all the Alexander property, but some of the parcels were sold off for commercial development, but the Alexander home remains. And one of the issues was the proximity of the dumpster to that property. We worked with planning, we worked with planning to move that dumpster as far away as possible from that home and the homes behind. And just for some perspective, the homes behind this facility are almost a full football field from the building envelope with tree buffers, and it's a long way from any of the homes. But we moved the dumpster to the extreme, the furthest distance possible from any home in the front, what would be front corner closest to Gallatin Road. Planning determined that this was okay, that the trucks could get in and out. The dumpster will now be, but it's behind a fence, nobody will see it. And also with the dumpster, Ms. Petrelli had suggested maybe more frequent emptying of that dumpster, so we've agreed to an amendment which would allow for that to be emptied 3 times a week. There was also some concern about the fact that the play area would wrap around the back of the building, and even though it would be almost 300 feet from those homes, there was still a concern that that might be too close, because when dogs are out for their scheduled playtime, that they could get around the back of the facility. And so that area was moved to the side of the facility so that there's no longer any play area along the back, further moving that play area again to the side and as far away as possible from the homes. We had already agreed that night to the restrictions on any dogs being outside after 8:30 PM and before, I believe it was 7:30 PM the next morning, so that there will be no noise in the evenings. And so I believe that addressed most of the points that were made that evening.
So how many dogs will be outside, the maximum number of dogs be outside at one time?
That depends on staff. There is, and the developers can speak more to operations if necessary, but they're always supervised outside. They're taken outside for scheduled breaks, and there are always staff with them so that they're not just left to run amok outside all day long. And people can pay for extra a la carte services so that, theirs could go out for an extra time or whatever. But there is staff on site that are trained to take them out for certain periods of time at a time, and they're always under supervision anytime that they are outside during the day.
Do you know if your client has looked at other pieces of property in Hendersonville for this facility?
I don't know the answer to that.
Can you repeat what you said, Marty?
He said they have, and this is the only site that was approved by their client.
Okay. I really appreciate your client making the concessions. I appreciate the general committee bringing this to the board so that we could have discussions. I, along with other board members, are concerned about the number of dogs in this location. I guess I have a question for Keith now. Thank you, Mr. Cook. So Keith,
Yes.
This property, when it was purchased and rezoned from residential, what was it rezoned to?
It was rezoned to office plan development.
Okay, so that would not include this type of facility?
It could have possibly, under personal services, I think I discussed this last time, the animal care and veterinarian services with a kennel is the most appropriate classification, but it is possible that it could have been included under personal care when it was office plan development, but that was not something that was spelled out, but it could have been something to been interpreted to be so, but it was rezoned and the plan development changed when we did the storage facility. That was rezoned from office plan development to general commercial plan development with different uses. And then that whole use of personal services was completely dropped, and that's not something that is an allowed use currently on the site.
Say that one more time, because I think that's
Yeah.
important.
The personal services that could have maybe been interpreted to include this, that was on the original office plan development, that was dropped when they exchanged for the storage facility. That's not an allowed use. They would, if you wanted to add personal care services, just like what they're doing for the animal care, you'd have to come back and go through the same process in order to do that. So if it's something that could have possibly been an option, prior when it was office plan development, it lost that when it was rezoned to general commercial plan development. I just kind of want to make that clear. It is something, kennels in general, in straight zoning for general commercial is allowed without a conditional use permit or anything. You could do that just as a permitted use and just do a site plan. You wouldn't have to get special permission to do that. But since this is a planned development with limited uses, that's why they've got to ask to have that added in order to allow that.
So this board has the discretion to reject this if it's
Yes.
not in the public interest, if we determine that it's not in the public interest?
Yeah, that's correct. This is different than a rezoning or even a planned development, or, like we would do, like we did Forest Park. That was a planned development rezoning. This already has a planned development on it. This specific case is dealing with adding a use. And so it's just at the discretion of BOMA to make that final determination. At your full discretion to do that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, that's all.
Alderman Robertson, thank you. Keith, does the planned development expire?
No.
Thank you.
Well, it could expire, this is kind of complicated. It could expire, but we'll never call it. So if a planned development is approved and not moved forward, then the city could go through the same process of rezoning and kind of de-zone it back, but it would have to go all the way back. It wouldn't go back to office plan development. It would go back to the original residential classification. So the city could do that, but it's never in the city's best interest. I can't think of an instance right now that there would be an instance where the city would want to revoke a planned development because we're in a better position. This is a good example of what's good about planned development. You get those uses and it's like, okay, we're okay with that. And then some people come in with some more uses and it's like, well, maybe we're okay with that, but we're not okay with this. Where if you revoke it all the way back to the base zone, then it's straight zoning and you can do by right what you can do. You don't have to ask for any special permission. You can do whatever is allowed by right in that particular zone.
Could a future property owner ever claim that the planned development expired and revert back to the base zoning?
You could, and you could request that, but it would be just like rezoning the property.
Okay.
And the city would not have to approve that.
Okay.
It would be at the full discretion of the Planning Commission in their recommendation and BOMA in their final decision in full discretion to either say, yeah, we agree with that, or no, we'd rather just keep what we've got until we can see something that we like in that specific instance.
Keith, thank you.
You're
Alderman
welcome.
Skidmore.
Oh, well, thank you very much. This light is red. Does that make any difference anymore?
It means that you're ready to speak?
All right. Well, I guess so. Thought it was green, but I guess it's a figment of my imagination, but I'll take it. Marty, I wanted to ask you a quick question. There's been some reference tonight earlier that there was a video. Can you elaborate on this video that was shown for us, or was it just something that was new, or was it something that we were there that could be seen, or the one online?
I was shown it by Mr. Roten when I was at his home. It's my understanding it was a promotional video that just showed.
All right, I didn't know if it was something that we need to have knowledge of up here. That doesn't seem.
It hasn't been a part of any of our presentations.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing I wanted to ask the gentleman that you're representing, and I'm really sorry about your name. You just came and spoke, and I apologize. I'm pretty good at that, of writing it down when I can't remember, but I didn't. You might want to come up here because I have a question for you about your Murfreesboro location. Do you? Oh wait, do you? Do what?
Mike, we suspend the rules for everybody, so if there's somebody else that's better off answering
Yeah,
this.
no, I should be able to. Thank you.
Where is that in Murfreesboro? Because I think I might have seen it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're actually there converting an existing building, and we've added an outdoor area. It was a former boot barn, actually.
Okay, I did see it.
yeah.
Okay, I saw it this
And so,
weekend. All right. The other question is, how many square feet is that area out there in Murfreesboro?
In Murfreesboro, it's actually a little bit. No, it's about the same size, 11,000 square feet, I believe. I think it's about, maybe, it might be 10.5, but it's, for all practical purposes, the same size.
All right, I thought it might be because it just looks it, when we go by and you know that it's the old barn there, or what we used to call it years ago. But I thought so, and I'm familiar with obviously the property in question tonight. But I wanted to make sure because it looked like it was. And when are y'all scheduling to open that? Do you have any clue?
That should be, we're delivering to the client in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, because it looked pretty close.
Yeah. And just to add, I mean, there's a developer that's almost done construction of a significant higher-end apartment complex behind it. And,
right.
And they didn't get scared by our use, so.
Yeah.
Whatever that's
Well,
worth.
I was going to, regardless of how we all vote up here tonight, I was going to say that, that one in Murfreesboro is almost right behind a complex, there. But Murfreesboro is so different than what we are. You can't really compare the two because it has just absolutely ballooned out there I can't even. But, Franklin has to, I was going to tell the board, I don't want to hear anybody more about traffic of Franklin versus Hendersonville because they are way worse than we are here. I can tell you that. So, but anyway, well, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate it, and I don't think I have anything else, and thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Skidmore, thank you. Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll try to keep it brief for for everybody and for Mr. Roden, but I'm sorry, I'm going to talk waste again, and there's a reason why. First of all, I'd like to thank our planning director for getting the answers to the questions that I asked. I'd also like to thank the developers for getting so specific and also making that amendment for the 3 times a week, because that's very generous. So the reason why I brought up waste last time and the accumulation of waste, and I'm going to get really specific here, so y'all put on your earmuffs if you don't want to talk about poop. So dogs, an average-sized dog defecates 0.75, so 3/4 of a pound a day. At 200 dogs, that's 150 pounds of waste a day, okay? And I know that we're talking at your max capacity. So a week, that's 1,050 pounds of waste a week. It's a lot of waste. They have just said that they will accommodate the waste, okay? And how do I know that? I know that because I've run shelter environments before. And there's actually somebody in the audience who helped me rebuild one and watched me rebuild it from the ground up. I spoke with one of your competitors. They're not listening, so I'll talk to you, Keith. So a very dear friend of mine owns your #1 competitor in Nashville. And I asked her a little bit about her waste protocol. And she had nothing but stellar things to say about you guys, okay? And she's your #1 competitor. She said that you all have an excellent reputation, that your quality of control and how you treat animals is outstanding. With that being said, if for some reason this does not pass tonight, we don't know till we vote. I implore you, and I know you just said that you've looked in other parts of town, but I implore you to please consider Hendersonville still. For me, the issue is the site being so narrow. Honestly, whether there's a residence there or not, it's tight. But if there was another business there, like can a food industry go into those sites on either side? A restaurant, a McDonald's per se? No? Okay.
Not a drive-through. Maybe it's set down. I don't know.
Hey, Keith, why don't you come up here?
Sorry.
Jeff looks at me when somebody does
Yeah,
that.
I'm sorry, I don't know for sure if food services are allowed. I'm pretty sure a drive-through wouldn't be allowed. Maybe a sit-down restaurant, but I don't think restaurants are an allowed use.
Okay.
At this particular time, yeah. But something else, there
Sure.
could be another use that.
Any other business use there, and let's face it, at some point, whether it's in 5 years or 50 years, there's a business going there.
Right.
And unfortunately, to me, the use of the shelter, or I'm sorry, the use of the kennel environment is just a little bit conflicting with either side. And I know that other people do not have the same opinion as me, but that's just my personal opinion. So that's my main objective, quite frankly, is the narrow site. There's no good place to put the dumpster. I appreciate you guys moving the dumpster, but it just puts the same quality of life burden on the next lot when that eventually gets developed. But with all of that to say, I appreciate you all going to great efforts to get the information. I appreciate you all being very stellar kennel environments for animals, and I really feel like you could contribute to our community. And I again implore you to look at Ward 1. I know it's not the most popular, trendy part of town, but I know that the folks over there and in general, all of Hendersonville would appreciate an environment like that over there. Thank you.
Alderman Petroli, thank you. Alderman Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, before you come up, would you be looking up that dog ordinance that you gave us a couple of weeks ago? Do you have it with you?
I can give it to you off the top of my head.
Let's suspend the rules and let the chief come up.
There's actually.
Are you going to cite it by memory?
Yeah, there's actually two ordinances, one in Chapter 10 and one in 11, and both of them say basically the same thing, that it talks about dogs yelping, whining, and so on, gives further descriptions like that, and said if it would disturb the peace of the neighborhood. So there's where the subjectiveness of it comes in. I mean, who's going to make that determination? I guess it would probably be us. But that would certainly be open for a court to have to decide that. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the developer to come back up, if you don't mind. What I heard earlier from one of the speakers, is it correct? This facility is the first one in a neighborhood that you've built? I think I heard that earlier tonight.
The first one in Louisville is backs against the neighborhood. Yes, it does, sir.
This one is the first one in the neighborhood, except where?
No, the first one that we have built for Pet Suites in Louisville, Kentucky, backs against a neighborhood.
Okay, so this would be the second one then?
That backs against the neighborhood?
It's in a neighborhood, period.
No, I believe they have others that are in the neighborhood. I don't know exactly. I mean, they're spread, some of them, as people mentioned, are in industrial parks, and I'm not disputing that.
Okay. Reading your resubmittal here, all of the outdoor area now being on the east side of the building, is that correct?
That's correct, except for the access through the back door.
No outdoor area for the dogs at all? Like the last meeting, we had, 16 pens and 12 pens? No pens at all?
We've just moved those a little further away from the neighbor to the south and from the neighbor to the east, so that it's now consolidated all on the, I hope I get this right, on the east side of the building. I'm sorry, it's kind of angled.
Everything's on the east side?
Yeah, that's correct, sir.
Also known as the Gallatin side. If that helps everybody. Here we go.
Petrelli, I appreciate you bringing out that memo a while ago about the poop. You've done your homework, I tell you. I'm confused about the back door, about the back of the building, the east. Does any of these pictures show me anything?
They should actually. Can we put those up on the?
What I'd like to know is, where is the dumpster going to be, and where are these pens going to be moved to the east?
I'll show it. Go back one.
Go back one.
That one right there.
That's a good one there. Thank you. On the top far left is the proposed new dumpster area, and very similar setup that we currently have in Louisville, Kentucky. And the operator currently operates, I think, in the neighborhood of 70 or so properties in the United States, and has no problem with having that in that location. And so, and I think we've shared in pretty substantial detail how they handle the waste and all that sort of stuff. So that's, and we worked with, and thank you for that, with the city staff to get to a location that appeared to work for the developer and for the staff, which is how we got there, and in the process addressing the problem that we had to the west, or the challenge. The next change we made was, there's a little cluster on the top left-hand corner again, which is outside, and you see 3 of them are darkened, and that's because they're under what's called canine turf, which is artificial turf. The rest of it's on concrete. Those used to be lined up.
Those dark places, where are they? Are they on the east side of the building?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm on the far top right-hand corner. So when you referred to, I think it was 18, we reduced them slightly just because we ran out of area. But we moved them from being along the back of the building up into that corner. We just,
Keith, can you show with the adapter with your little spot? Excuse me.
Yeah, he's saying like, he's saying right here is where that dumpster location is.
Okay.
And then all these dark areas right here, that's the AstroTurf. And then all this area where I'm going through here, that's all concrete. And then this is the back door that faces the rear yard. And then you come out this little area in the fenced area to access this larger area. And then here are those outdoor pens that are, I guess, holding for where they're bringing the animals out to let them go to the bathroom. Is what this area is, from what I understand.
Is that the one that was in the back that they moved?
Yeah, all of this was like, if you follow my cursor, that was all back here.
On the
Yeah, so this right here, the fence did used to go like this, and it went all the way back like this. And then they got rid of all this in the back and pushed it all the way to this side.
To the east, to the other side of the building.
To the east of, yes.
Keith, we had some pretty good renderings in the package. Are we able to get those up?
Let me see, maybe. Hold on just a second, let's see if I got it there.
That's the one we built actually in Louisville. Hang on for a second, go back up. So that's the one we built in Louisville, Kentucky. On the far left there, you can see a property. The outdoor area, in this case, happens to be on the right. Yep.
This is not what's being built here.
Correct.
This is just some kind of brochure, as I can see.
So that's the interior. Let's walk back. I think it's worth walking through. So that's the interior.
That's inside, right?
Okay, I'll get that.
If we scroll back up one more, just see. So that's the entrance area. That's just another other angle of that entrance area. Same here. So scroll back down. Yeah. Let's go slowly to get a sense of what's going on. So that's actually the Louisville outdoor area. So you get a sense for the AstroTurf there and the little doggy pool.
Is that the kind of fence that's going to be all the way around?
That is correct.
That fence there?
Yep. Scroll down, please. That's it. So I thought there was. Okay.
Yeah, here we go. I think here they are. And then, it's not showing.
Okay, now how many, that's good for me, Keith, unless they want to keep watching it.
This is where the dumpster is. This is the front. This is the east side. Yeah, east side. Right? Yeah, east side. And
Yeah.
this is the
West side.
The west side, and this is the rear.
I think we're good. Alderman Waters, anything else?
Pardon me?
Anything else, Alderman Waters?
Oh, yeah, I'm just getting started, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. How many dogs did we say is going to be out at any one time?
I think we talked about that it varies. We walked through all that depending on what's happening that day. I mean, we talked about the video, which I think is good to bring up. And, the video shows, I mean, could there be 25 dogs? Absolutely. I mean, it's a dog boarding and spa facility. They're there under supervision. They're there in a controlled environment. They keep them engaged so they don't bark all the time. Dogs who bark all the time are not welcome back. Obviously, because it doesn't work for the facility, they wouldn't be successful operating the facilities they're operating in the locations they are if that wasn't the case. So.
And the dogs will be out, 3 times a day? Is that what I heard?
The typical, so if you've just got the typical, you pay the base rate, I think they take out 3 times a day. You could buy, an extra couple of times by paying extra, so they take them back out. So there's a lot of sort of circulation of dogs in and out if you look at the design of the facility. And again, all under managed situation.
So these dogs could be anywhere from the size of a poodle to a greyhound, right?
Yeah, they might actually be bigger than a greyhound.
No, I don't mean to be funny.
Yeah.
Is that the size of the dogs from a poodle to a German shepherd?
Yeah, that's correct.
It could be any of those.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I had the opportunity to visit a citizen this week. When he called me, he was mad as, and I'll let you finish that sentence out. So I went to see him. He was really angry about the way he said we treated Mrs. Alexander. And I appreciate his position on what he said about it. But the main reason he wanted to get with me, he's got a neighbor next door, and we marked it off 65 feet from his house to the next house. One dog. It's, can't remember the name of the breed. But we sat there for 2 hours, from 3 to 5 o'clock. Here's what I heard. Now, you know, we have some people up here that want to be funny, but I'm serious. There's a heart attack. I know this lady, and I think I shared last meeting how I felt about this. No, I'm not for it. That's one dog.
Well,
We sat there, we sat there for 2 hours talking. That's what we heard.
Well, we obviously can't control what that neighbor does with their dogs. I mean, usually it's an indication of a dog that's bored. I mean, if it was my dog and most anybody else in here, I would suspect that if the dog continues to bark like that, you bring the dog in, or there's
You can't control what a dog does, especially at night when you're not there. After 8:30, I believe, 8:30 to 7 o'clock the next morning,
Yeah, but they're inside at that time.
and you can't hear them.
Hold on, guys. If you've got a question, go ahead. If he doesn't have a question, let's just let him speak. Thank you, Mike.
I just urge my colleagues to vote no on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that, Alderman Waters. Alderman Strauss.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to advocate for or against this project. I'm going to advocate for the process, where we've been, how we get here, and hopefully the next steps that we take. A mistake was made in Planning Commission, but it was fixed in the same meeting. Mr. Cook was the one who spoke up about that. And I'll repeat what Dr. Robinson said about, that was a highly ethical, and that's the person that I know in making that recommendation. We had a rather lengthy conversation at our last meeting with a lot of concerns, and I'm thankful that the board deferred the conversation until tonight so those concerns could be addressed. And I don't know if you noticed, but when we left our last meeting, despite the hour, our staff was in the Newman room with the applicant, immediately going through saying, okay, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And last week, a plan was brought to me and then brought to the rest of us on Friday that, in all likely, everything I could say, it addressed every concern that was brought forward in this meeting. Things that I didn't even think were possible. I reached out to everyone who was in the meeting and said, if you have any interest, because there were some questions about how people know what's going to go on, and said, give me contact information right now. We'll get in touch with it. I didn't get any contact information, but I was able to, at least, from the folks themselves, but I was able to later get that information from someone else. And I appreciate Mr. Roden for having Mr. Campbell come in and talk to him, and we addressed about every issue we could. And here's where we're kind of stuck. And I want to ask the board, if you have any opinions, if you have any advice, I'm open to it. Because it was mentioned earlier that this could hurt the Burris property if this was built. Well, that's something that could be answered on anything. Also, probably this discussion is going to hurt the Burris property having anything built on it, because I don't know anyone who would be aware of the discussion that we have like this that would have any interest of even putting a contract on the Burris property. And this is why I'm needing y'all's advice and your help, because this is not a typical property in Ward 2. Ward 2's northern boundary runs from Maple Drive on the east to Walton Ferry Road on the west. That southern stretch of Main Street. And if you can imagine, almost all of it is developed and almost all of it is commercial. I believe this is the only, this house is the only residential piece of property left. And this lot, these two lots, are really the only undeveloped properties abutting on Gallatin Road that abut residential property. And I'm not going to fault anyone for decisions that were made many, many years ago. But we have to have the reality, we have to recognize the reality of the situation that the city is in trying to be fair in all property owners. That property line is very, very close to the Alexander property. It is so close to the Alexander property that when the line gets to the corner of the house, it has to jut out a few feet to go past the house and then juts back while it goes towards the road. I wouldn't like that. But Mr. Alexander drew that line when he subdivided the lot to sell the other half for commercial. Again, that was a decision that was made at another time by another person. Just have to be where we are. I was asked, is this something that I would want? What are we going to have to do with the neighbors? And I feel for them. And again, these were decisions that were made decades ago at another time, another place, different situations. But these are properties that butt against property that is fronted by a state highway that is predominantly commercial. And my goal is every time we touch something, we may not be able to make it perfect, but I hope we can make it better. And so many times, not in this situation, but so many times we see before the board that it's not that we're against this, we're for development on the property, we're just not for this development. And I'm trying to figure out how do we avoid those types of situations, if not now, in the future, in that a piece of property is sold for commercial use, but then any potential commercial use that comes up is told, well, that's not the one. I represent the neighbors. You heard me tell the story a couple weeks ago at the last meeting, telling Bill Portman when he had a barking dog that he lived in Ward 4 and that dog lived in Ward 2, and I represent the dog. I've had my concerns addressed for the most part. It's not perfect, but it's better. And I did say that. I did say of all the things that potentially could be built on Gallatin Road, on that property, between Gallatin Road and your house, this is a smaller footprint. It is less obtrusive in its hours of operation. It's not going to have the same amount of traffic going through it. I'm not saying that it's great, but I can say when I talk to our planning director about things, it's a lot better than what could go there and never have to come to this board. So the question I have is, are we really making something better? So when concerns about location of the dumpster are resolved, when the number of pins and the location of pins resolved, how long the dogs are going to be out, how early, how late, that's resolved. How often the dumpster, I've never in my entire life thought we would be discussing how often a dumpster is, that's resolved. But there's one thing I can't resolve. And it's something I'm open to discussion from the board, because I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm not going to make a motion, but I'm going to make a suggestion. And if someone would like to make the motion, I'd be very interested to support that. But the question about the noise, because I do know what one dog barking all day or all afternoon or all morning can be like. And I hate to think about that, what that's like if it's multiplied. But then at the same time, when I get noise complaints from people in Ward 2 about a barking dog, it's usually because it's an owner who's absent, who leaves the dog out all day. And we're hearing that we have someone who's in the business of caring for dogs, and if the word gets out that they're leaving dogs outside unattended all day, they're not going to be in business very long, particularly at the rates that they're charging and the clientele that they're hoping to reach. But I picture in my mind, there's that possibility that something's built and it looks good and it fits and it doesn't smell bad and it doesn't have a lot of traffic and it's not very intrusive, but they do have that sound issue. And right now, the only way I think that we can resolve that I can resolve that, but I'm open to discussion from anyone else who has any ideas, is if we have another property in the area in Murfreesboro that y'all are developing that's going to be close to being opened, that we wait until we can go and we can look and see for ourselves, because we're not being told by residents on one hand something, and we're not being told by applicant on another. And I'm not saying, I mean, everyone's advocating for their own position, and I'm glad that they're doing that. We have the ability to go and look and see, and more importantly, hear with our own ears how the operation is and what the reality is. Because the reality is ultimately something is going to develop on this property. I would assume that the Alexander home itself will not forever be residential property. Because I would guess that anyone would ever sell it would not sell it for the value of residential property, and no one would buy it for the value of commercial property and not want to make it commercial. So I'm kind of stuck. I have something that we don't normally have in Ward 2. And I'm open for advice from any of you. How do we resolve this? How do we set a course forward? Because I will let you know, our staff has been willing to work with every step that we need. The applicants have been willing. I've been very happy that the residents would sit down and talk and look at what's going through. But if we're going to have this dialogue, we need to see what the dialogue is moving toward and what type of resolution. Because this is not a this or nothing. It's ultimately going to be this or something else. And I don't know. I really would appreciate y'all's advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Strauss. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 questions, one for the developer. Your facility in Louisville, how far away is it the closest residence?
I'm going to estimate here, but it's significantly closer than this one. I'm going to say 50 to 75 feet. Let me see if I can bring the,
Okay.
because I think you'll get a pretty good.
Yeah, I saw it kind of flashed before my eyes, but I didn't get a good idea.
So this one doesn't show it. I think this, there
Yeah, there
we
it
go.
is. There it is.
So there's the.
Is that an apartment complex, or is it
That's
a?
a single-family home. It's
Okay.
it's a cul-de-sac. There's
Did that
3 or
property
4.
have to be rezoned or anything, or?
We went through a conditional use permit here.
Okay.
So it was.
Did you get any pushback from the residents?
We work with the residents, and very, very, very much so what we're doing here today.
Oh, okay.
And actually, it started with this over here. And again, it was our first one. We were learning. And one of the compromises, obviously, which is very similar to what we did here, but it was so much closer. And believe it or not, I was involved in getting this one approved, and I know the people at the time who owned the homes, and I've not gotten the calls from them. I'm not saying they're not here and barking, but I have not gotten a call.
Okay. That's fair enough.
So,
Fair enough.
again, they're
Okay.
dogs. Okay, but
I understand that.
yeah. So
And then I have a question for Keith. When the Alexanders sold this property, because I'm not clear on this, was this specifically one of the allowed uses of the property?
No.
You
No.
answered my question, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Cunningham. Alderman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we take a 10-minute break?
Can we finish
Motion and a
this?
second to take a 10-minute break.
And I'd like to speak when we return, if you don't mind.
Am I the last one?
No. Jason, can you pull up opportunity for us to vote?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Who else is in the queue? I'm the only one.
It's 10 o'clock, man. Somebody need to use the restroom, take a restroom break.
Pat?
Just the two of us?
And then me.
I might say something.
Yeah. All those in favor of taking a 10-minute break, please signify by punching your button aye. Those opposed, please hit nay.
All right. Let them up. It stops flashing when you vote. You lock in your vote, it locks.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Yes, ma'am.
Your light will be dark.
So those voting yes are Alderman Campbell, Alderman Sprouse, Alderman Petrelli, Alderman
passed
Cunningham,
7-5.
Alderman Bolt, Alderman Hayes, Alderman Robertson. Those voting no, Alderman Waters, Alderman Woodcock, Alderman Brown, myself, and Alderman Skidmore, and it passes 7-5. We're going to take a, did you say 10-minute break?
Who
Yes,
did
sir.
not vote?
Yes, sir.
We're back in 10 minutes.
Did not show you who did not vote?
Well, I mean, they had to go the.
Campbell, you're first.
All right.
Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Campbell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I was wanting to ask the developer, there was some discussion last time we had our meeting regarding the backside shielding. I know there's going to be some nice vegetation between the houses of that backside. Was there any type of privacy fence or any other type of screening that would be between this property and the homeowners on Burris Avenue, in addition to trees? I wasn't sure if there was any physical.
At this time, when we designed the site, we focused on vegetation because it, it stands the test of time better than a wooden fence. And because of the distance, again, almost a football field, we felt that greenery was more important. If a fence makes a difference, which we didn't think it did, we thought it was more effective to enhance landscaping than, I don't know that a fence, wooden fence gets between us and the neighbors, but at the same time, we just, want to be conscious of the budget, so.
Yes, sir. And would it be appropriate if, I wanted to ask you if you possibly could defer this so we can go out and look at your Murfreesboro location once it's up and operational and actually see animals in the facility so we can actually get hands-on, walk around the property, listen to it, look at it, Can we do that? Can we defer it for a month or?
Well, the challenge is I think it's 3 weeks or so when we deliver. The tenant takes 30, 45 days to get
Up and running?
So it's 2 months, and
2 months, okay.
we're trying to hold on to a piece of property, that we have under contract, and so there's some moving parts. We prefer not to, but that's the only option. We can see if we can get there, but the concern is that, again, we can't hang on to the property.
Okay, sir.
And it's not, if it was 3 weeks, it's a bit of a different story, but realistically, Murfreesboro's probably, Hunter, help me a little bit. When is our delivery? 30 days after that, so it's late April. So that's the delay.
I drove by that facility today to see if it was up and operational and actually turned around in the parking lot while they were doing a lot of the construction work there.
Yeah.
And it's moving right along. It looks nice looking facility from what I saw, but.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, I'd like to, I would love to be able to walk over there and look at it because I actually have a dog kennel across the street from my office. That wall back there to where I'm sitting right now, you're at the front door of my building, and there's a street, a sidewalk, and 1 foot off the sidewalk is a privacy fence, and there's dogs back there, and they don't have 200 dogs, they don't have 50 dogs in there. It's a Red Rover grooming or dog daycare on Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, and
Do you get paid for the
you
advertising?
can hear the dogs barking outside if you're out there, and I actually sit out there this afternoon just to see what it sounded like for a little bit, but I rolled the windows down of my car and, okay.
It gets buried in the car traffic.
But I mean, I'm extremely close. I'm not 300 feet away.
Yeah.
And that's why I was just curious if we could get a better feel for your, I've heard some conversations regarding the noise coming from inside the building going outside. I mean, I know you can use some sound absorbing materials and things to build a building, and you can't hear anything outside that building.
Well, I mean, all the facilities that we're working right now with this, with Pet Suites, except for one, is adjacent to residential in some form or another. And they just wouldn't be in business if they couldn't manage it. And so I think that's the, I mean, it's not much more that I can say.
Well, that's why I was asking about deferring it until we had a chance to go down and physically walk around that location, see it, and listen to animals inside of it. That's what really, I would love to be able to do that, but, make a motion to defer it?
That's a motion, I'll second it.
Yeah, I'll make it as a motion to defer it for, 60 days.
We have a motion to defer this item for 60 days. Do we have a second?
I second that, but can we leave the
We have
date?
a-
Yeah, can I leave that, can I modify the date a little bit to,
So tell me what your motion is.
I'd like to make a motion to defer it until the Murfreesboro location is up and operational, so we can go down and physically inspect that location, see it.
Okay, and we have a second for that?
Yes, sir.
So we have a motion and a second. We can debate this motion. Alderman Wilcox, you're next in the queue. Do you want to talk about the motion to defer this until the other facility is up and operational?
No.
Okay. I'll keep your light on right there, and I'll come back to you in a minute. Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry. If we're going, if the motion on the floor is deferred till they're open, it's pointless, if you're not at least 75% capacity. I mean, if you just have 20 dogs there, it doesn't have the same, our planning director is shaking his head. So, it might take them a while to build up their clientele, or you could be flooded on the first day. You don't know. But there's no point in taking a field trip if there's only 20 dogs there. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Petrelli. Anybody else wish to speak on this motion to defer?
Yes, sir.
Alderman Sprouse.
I completely understand what Mrs. Petrelli is saying. Here's the situation we're looking in. We could go, if anyone wanted to go, you could go and you could see what you can see and you can hear what you can hear. Saying no, let's not even have the opportunity to inspect because we can't be guaranteed of an inspection completely makes the decision now. Whereas if we say at least have the opportunity to see what reality is, if someone did go down there and what you saw wasn't significant information to make a decision, at least you're making a better decision than any of us can make right now. If you go down there and you hear something that tells you, yes, this is something I can't support, again, we're making a better decision than any decision that we can make right now. And so I'm one of those that I usually like to go ahead and touch something once, but if there's a situation where we have the possibility of bringing more information to give a more sound, and I'm not saying more sound in favor or more sound against, but just a more sound, more informed decision, let's do it.
Alderman Sprouse, thank you. Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. Do they have another facility that's close by, other than Murfreesboro?
Mike or Marty, you want to try that one?
Louisville is the closest one?
We're open in Louisville, we know that. Drive by
Is
it
that
every
the
day.
closest one that you have?
Just trying to think, Hunter, can you think of?
Other than Murfreesboro?
It's not open yet, that's what we're trying to.
It's kind of Louisville, right? Yeah, it'd probably be Louisville.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Cunningham, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Petrelli.
Yes, if we're talking about the reality, which is what was stated, the reality is that 20 dogs versus 200 dogs has a much higher, louder, broader decibel level of spread than lesser. So if we're going to take a field trip, let's at least have half capacity. Thank you.
Alderman Petrelli, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this motion to defer this? Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know that going to Murfreesboro or Louisville will change a vote for me. I'm ready to vote for y'all now and let you know how I feel, so.
Alderman Brown, thank you. Jason, are we ready?
There's a new kind of dog voting on.
We're voting on a motion to defer this
Very visible one.
until the Murfreesboro facility is up and operational. All those in favor of deferring it, please signify by voting aye and pressing the button that is green, and those opposed, press the button that is red when they start flashing. Yep. We're voting, we're waiting for the, there we go. Okay, that fails 8-4. Those voting in favor, Alderman Sprouse, Alderman Campbell, Bolt, and Hayes. Those voting against were Robertson, Waters, Woodcock, Brown, myself, Cunningham, Skidmore, and Petrelli. We're back to the main motion. Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you. Could we go back to the pictures?
You don't want to see our pictures?
No, I want the pretty ones.
Which one do you want to see, Alderman?
Yes. So where's the dumpster in one of these pictures?
Hold on a second. It should be if it pops up. Here we go.
No, one of the real site. Like you're showing me Bardstown Road.
Oh, okay.
Where's the dumpster at?
Is there a
Oh, I can answer, absolutely.
You need to go to that second.
Yeah, I'll go to the second slide. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. That's actually a rendering. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Up? Sorry. Nope. Oh, I got it. I'm a little slow. I apologize. It's getting late.
There we go. Mike, go back down, I think.
Yeah, I got it.
Stop.
I got it. So the dumpster, you can't see, I don't know if you can see it here. You can't. So this is the facility. The dumpster is right here. Let me see if we've got that angle. So actually, there's the dumpster. So it's freestanding, approximately the same distance as we're proposing here.
All right, now show me the layout, the new layout with where to be positioned to the building and Main Street.
I'm getting pretty good at this. Hang on. It is inside here.
Okay.
Yeah, and these are brick columns, and again, we worked with staff with this to try to make it go away aesthetically.
Okay, now show me the aerial that had the 3 spots that are covered.
Yeah. So there's actually 2. Well, maybe we end up with just one covered area.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to see that. So that's the trash can, the white box.
There's the trash there, trying to make it go away in the fence.
Is it a full-size dumpster? The pull-in dump types.
Yep.
All right, that's all my question.
Alderman Woodcock, thank you. I've got a question for Keith. Keith, if you can help me out. If we were to change our noise ordinance, is this property grandfathered?
I don't think anything would be grandfathered as far as noise.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you could grandfather, a noise thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
I know in Tennessee, we do have some restrictions on zoning as far as we can't restrict, I think, horses and some livestock.
Yeah.
Are there any similar restrictions for a kennel?
No, not that I'm aware of. I think it would just have to abide by whatever our current ordinance is.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure from a litigious standpoint, if we went too far with an ordinance that impeded a person's ability to do their business reasonably, then that could be an issue. But if it was a reasonable noise ordinance, then we should be fine.
So if this becomes a problem and we choose to change our ordinance to impact the noise level because it's close to a residential area, they would have to comply.
Yes.
If it's reasonable.
Yeah, and I think the ways that they could possibly comply in this situation would be, hey, we can't have that many dogs outside at a time, and that might be one way for them to control that.
Or additional sound buffering?
Really, from a sound buffering standpoint, I think they've probably done about what they could do on that site.
Gotcha. Okay, I appreciate that. Any other discussion on this? So we're back on the main motion, and that is to accept Resolution 2020-9. This is a resolution to approve a final development plan for the Jack Anderson property, Lot 2, known as Pet Suites. Jason, are we ready? I appreciate that. All those in favor, please signify by pressing the green button. Those opposed, signify by placing the red one. Everybody except for Alderman Woodcock. Okay. So That fails 2-10. Those voting for it were Alderman Bolt, myself. Against, Cunningham, Woodcock, Robertson, Waters, Hayes, Skidmore, Campbell, Petrelli, Sprouse, and Brown. So that fails. Next we have on the agenda, Resolution 2020-12. This is a resolution authorizing the transfer of Codes Department funds in the amount of $13,500 for scanning project expenses. Alderman Cunningham.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of Resolution 2020-12, please signify by saying aye. We're just going to do a voice vote unless I hear we just need to do something else. All those in favor of 2020-12, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Next, we have item 2020-16. This is a resolution approving the application for a COPS grant to hire 3 new police officers. Alderman Brown. We have a motion and a second. Hold on one second here. Our motion was from Alderman Brown. Our second was from Alderman Petrelli. All those in favor of Resolution 2020-16, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. That passed unanimously. Now we have consideration of Charles Jones to serve on the Deer Herd Monitoring and Control Committee. Alderman Hayes. Motion and a second. Alderman Hayes motion makes the main motion, and Alderman Woodcock a second. Alderman Brown.
I have a question, if that's permissible.
On the application.
Well, not on Mr. Jones, but, I mean, do we even have an active committee? When's the last time the committee met? We have everybody's terms expired.
Who's our liaison to that committee?
Used to be, I don't know if we have a liaison. Do we still have a deer herd committee that actually has had a meeting in the last 12 months and had a discussion?
Whoever our liaison is, could you please?
I don't believe that's a yes.
We do not have, I can answer those questions as I'm a current member. Are you talking about the Deer Committee?
Yes.
We do not have a board liaison. If you recall, Mayor, we've had that discussion when you first became mayor. We do not have a liaison per se. And no, they have not met, I don't think in the last 12 months. But I could be wrong. It's been a while. Thank you.
All those in favor of Mr. Jones to be appointed to Deer Herd Monitoring and Control Committee, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. We're adjourned.